a guy came off the edge and we're like, hey, we're not here to screw you up. You were here first.
You were like, hey, listen, we're not the hunting public.
Yeah. We're like, hey, it was actually funny because those guys were there too.
I know. I figured I saw Zach and those guys.
The guys you're looking there, they went that way. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
What can we say, man? Another year back with Hoyt. We're both shooting RX8s. I'm shooting 70 pounds in the bourbon, which I love bourbon.
It's great.
And you're shooting 80 pounds in the straight black.
Blacked out as always, man. I got the, so I'm shooting the 500 grain Easton Arrow this year. And at 80 pounds, I'm flinging that thing at like 300 feet per second. I mean, it's deadly. Put a water buffalo in front of me and he's done.
I mean, we shot it earlier. You literally put an arrow through a brand new target, like never been shot before.
I know. So one other thing that Hoyt is doing this year is they're making all their own strings in-house. And so the quality is top notch, and it just really is something that is setting them apart from their competitors.
Well, what we always try to do when we go to our bow shop, Ultimate Outdoors, is we try to shoot other bows just to make sure that we are really giving everybody a fair chance. Sure. The reality is it's a no-brainer. Hoyt stands above all of them every single time.
Definitely. And so right now you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, for 20% off any apparel on the Hoyt website. And as always,
get serious, get Hoyt. And we're back.
Ew.
HUNTR Podcast, episode 230. We're still in 2024?
Yeah, this is the day after Christmas.
Yeah, it's still happening.
Merry Christmas.
This is I think actually we have one more in 2024 after this.
Mm-hmm.
Might be New Year's Eve, the day before, something like that. Whatever that
sounds
Tuesday
right.
is.
Sounds right. So this is the 26th.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. So Levi's going to be on Christmas Eve.
He is.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about
Merry
that?
Chrysler.
Merry Chrysler. Cool.
Isn't Christmas great?
Yeah.
Come on.
I don't want to be the screw.
You don't get seasonal?
No. It's kind of like, I mean, I like Christmas a lot. I like the movies, the lead up to it.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I miss the white snow Christmases. Like, we don't get that anymore. It's just like it's rainy and 40 degrees.
We may have some by then.
Maybe.
Is it not supposed to?
Mm-mm. But yeah. So, I mean, I like Christmas.
I mean, see, snow's hit or miss, but
I
Christmas
really
is always
look forward
Christmas.
To new socks. That's like my
New
favorite
socks?
thing
Bro,
about Christmas.
I'm wearing my new socks today.
Wow.
I got them yesterday.
How about that?
Nice.
I asked for them.
Yeah.
You can always use a new pair of socks.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of as weird as it is, and it's probably been like this since I was like, I'd say like a teenager, is like I look forward to the day after Christmas because that's when Pennsylvania's deer season comes back in. So like I could go bow hunt, or I really like flintlock season because it's only like 2 weeks and change.
Yeah.
And it's always like the day after. So I'm like not rushing to get through the holidays. I'm a big Christmas Eve guy.
Yeah.
Like I really like the anticipation of Christmas. Once Christmas Day comes, then I'm like on the downhill slide real quick. My Christmas tree goes away on the 26th.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
So if you're listening to this, I'm packing up.
That's crazy.
Really? The day after?
Oh yeah.
Is it a real tree?
No.
You gonna do a real tree?
No.
Wow.
Nope. Fig tree.
Wow.
Yeah, she goes away today.
Did your parents ever do a real tree?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just never.
Yeah. No, I don't want to water it, and I don't want to do that stuff.
I think, dude, it was
I don't like
hit or
that.
miss
Do
in
you
my
have a real
household.
tree?
Yeah, I have a real tree.
You water it and stuff?
Like once a week.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
They get stinky sometimes.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
That's the dead squirrel in it.
And they just shed like.
Yeah,
pine
see, I'm not a
everywhere.
pine
You
needle.
need to get a good tree. I get mine from Jed. I don't know what he plants, but whatever breed that is or whatever.
The
strain.
old
Yeah,
hybrid.
I could
hybrid.
not water that thing for months and it would never lose a needle. It's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know. No, I
bet your kids would like that. Real tree, little real tree action.
maybe.
Hey, wherever you're listening to us from, we appreciate you guys being here. Whether it's YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.
Christmas is over.
Give us a like, a follow, or a subscribe, whatever's appropriate for the channel. We appreciate you guys being here and doing that. One of those will notify you as to when we drop these episodes, but they are Tuesday nights every week at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and Thursday nights from time to time here.
From time to time.
As well. If you've written us on Instagram, DM, or the website, those are the two that we check most frequently.
We're getting there.
We have some merch on the website, and I'm probably wearing some. Jeremy probably is as well. I can see your hat. I never know what hat I'm wearing on the day of.
We are both wearing a hat.
I can't see what it is, but we appreciate you guys picking some of that stuff up. That funds a lot of what we do here.
And Nick.
And Nick as well. Nick appreciates that. So
He does.
Thank you, everybody.
we appreciate that. And here we go.
Here we go. It's the 26th of December, still in 2024. Feels like
a creature was
keeps going.
stirring.
And that was 2 nights ago. We can't talk about that now. Christmas is over.
It does, yeah, it is over. But the whole like through New Year's is the holiday season, so it's it gets to be holidicious.
Yeah.
Last Christmas question here, and people can comment. I'm curious what people
Okay.
have to say.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite Christmas cookie?
Oof.
Like what shape?
Nah, like
Christmas cookies are Christmas cookies, right?
My grandmother makes an apricot cookie.
That's
It's
a good
the
one, huh?
best. Apricot cookies.
See,
are
I
my
used to
favorite.
be, I don't know what they're called. They're like the peanut butter thumb cookies.
Oh, yeah.
With the Hershey
The
Kiss.
Hershey
Oh
Kiss.
yeah, those are good.
Classic.
Yeah. What are those called? I don't know, but
know.
they're a
Peanut
staple.
butter
Thumbs. No, snickerdoodles are also great.
Yeah.
Yeah, snickerdoodles are also great. I used to just call them
starts with
peanut
S.
butter thumb cookies.
Blossoms.
Are
That's what they are. Peanut butter blossoms.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Warm. Yep. Hershey Kiss.
Hmm.
Very nice.
Like an oatmeal raisin guy, probably.
Yeah.
I just like a nice store-bought oatmeal raisin
Yeah.
cookie.
Fair.
You know what I mean? The stores are making them pretty good these days.
Yeah,
you know what I
they're
mean?
pretty good at
You
what
know,
they do.
Grandma's great, but you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're not gonna get that consistency out of
Yeah.
grandma. So
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Christmas cookies, though, to me are like when you say a tray of Christmas cookies, like
Yeah.
it's the straight
Icing.
Yeah,
It's
like
sugar
icing.
cookies.
Sugar cookies, yeah.
My mom used to always make.
Still good.
Like she would paint them. She paint them all. She would do all kind of variations of like there would be a moose, there would be
Yeah.
like a snowman, the
Kids still do that. We do that on Christmas
Yeah.
Eve. Bake a bunch of sugar cookies, then they
sugar
decorate.
cookies. That's there.
Jared would do a mature buck.
Oh yeah.
I'll
Oh, yeah.
bite his head right off.
I can guarantee I was gifted a deer or a buck cookie stamper at one point.
Oh, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
we probably have it.
What do you guys do for like, do you do like a Christmas Eve gathering or a Christmas Day gathering or both?
Usually both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Both.
Christmas Eve this year. We're hosting Christmas Eve, I think. No. Christmas Day.
You cooking?
I think we are.
Yeah.
I was told we're going grocery shopping this Saturday, so
It's kind of a big deal.
yeah. Every time I like raise my eyebrows at plans, she's like, "I told you about this." I'm like,
I just,
"Oh,
I
okay."
didn't say
Yeah,
anything.
I'm sure you did. That we're going.
Yeah. When'd you tell me? November? Yeah, it didn't register.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Like, you got to put it in my calendar here.
Yeah.
So, but that's happening. Yeah, we're cooking, and then we're going to Cincinnati. That's where my sister lives. Day after. So
Day after Christmas.
Maybe I'll
Today.
maybe I'll drive past where CJ shot that buck.
It's possible.
It's on the way. I'm pretty sure.
He might have a billboard up.
A billboard. Yeah.
Just a CJ billboard.
He's in jail right now.
Well, I don't know. I assume he might be spending
Straight
Christmas
to?
there. I don't think he passed go.
Yeah.
He was on the naughty list this year.
Yeah, he's on the naughty list this year.
Good one, Nick.
That made myself laugh.
Yeah. I know what
He's
he's
on the
getting
naughty
I know
list.
what he's getting in jail and nobody's gonna like it. Oh, sorry. Sorry, CJ. Hopefully it's like maybe he gets to listen to the podcast.
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe.
I'm not sure what his
They have to call into that same Amish like hotline that they have there. That's
very
how,
much
that's how that
so.
works in prison.
I don't know. Some of those prisons, like I went toward the Pittsburgh or Allegheny County Jail when I was like, I don't know, middle school.
Mm-hmm.
They had like PlayStations and all kinds of shit in there.
Wow.
I'm like, no wonder these guys are committing crimes.
Yeah. Free meals.
Yeah. Roof over your head, PlayStation. What? Hanging out with your bros.
Getting jacked.
Getting
in the gym.
Getting jacked, hanging out with your bros, play PlayStation. This place is great.
Yeah.
You can do that all outside of jail.
Oh, you
Yeah,
can?
Just
Yeah.
if you want it.
Not all in like one little community.
Yeah.
though.
It's like a big frat.
that you can't leave.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anyways, December 26th, which means, flintlock season and archer season's back open in Pennsylvania. South is ripping. It's like the rut down there. They're cranking. Ohio's got a muzzleloader season coming up. And I think that's
That's where we're at.
we're kind of wrapped. I mean, we talked about it a couple podcasts ago. It's like mid-January and things are like they start closing up. I'm
gonna pull a late season buck out here, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're listening to this, we're 5 days away from Kansas closing for the year.
I'm not like unlike our guest, which we'll get into here. I haven't hunted in 2 weeks, I think.
Wonder who our guest is.
2 weeks there. Yeah. It's Beau from business. So, just so everybody knows. I'll bring him in here in a minute. I haven't hunted in it's gotta be 2 weeks.
So you're still thinking about late season buck here, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll turn one up.
I'm kind of just
Whether I'll kill it or not,
I'm just gonna stack some does. I think.
Does and hoes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 2 or 3 will be my guess here in the next
Boats and does.
few weeks.
There's a t-shirt idea for you.
Boats and does. Still think floppy doe would have been a great name for scent.
Raging Booner.
Would have been awesome. Yeah. Yep. Anyways, let's bring our guest in. We've got Beau Martonik from East Meets West on today, and Beau's going to educate us on how to grow a proper mustache, I believe.
Proper mustache.
I believe that's the name of the game today.
But first,
I
must ask you a question.
All right, bring him in.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by DeerGro.
Man, we've been using DeerGro products for a long time. The Plot Start and Plot Boost, more recently Plot Till. Now we've got 3 new liquid fertilizers that have been put in the mix that will cover everything we could want for a food plot program.
It's huge, man. The more food plotting we do, it's like, man, the liquids just make sense. Like whether it's herbicides or the Plot Start and Plot Boost, and now the fertilizers getting mixed in. It's like, man, I can combine all of those in certain cases and do less passes for more results.
I mean, it's all about efficiency. I mean, like you said, less passes. If you're out there treating your beans with glyphosate in the summertime, you can mix in this fertilizer, do that all at once. You have the boost in there to help some metabolism. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about food plots. And really the big difference on these liquid fertilizers is you're bypassing some of these soil limitations, pH limitations, the soil type. In a lot of cases, we talk about dry fertilizers only being available for 17% of what you put down in the first year. These liquid fertilizers straight into the plant are 90% available in the first year. Huge difference in what you're going to see in growth.
It's huge. And so right now you can use code HUNTR15 for 15% off any of the DeerGro products on their website. And as always,
better food plots, bigger deer.
Well, what's going on, guys?
Welcome back, buddy.
We'd ask you what you got for Christmas, but technically we're filming this on the 17th,
wow.
So we're not there yet.
What kind of a webcam do you have, dude? That looks
wow,
amazing.
That is sharp.
It's my Sony A7 III that's hooked up through.
Wow.
Damn.
That is the crispest.
Have you ever thought about podcasting before?
Well, if you would have saw me messing with my audio equipment before this, then you would have thought I hadn't.
Yeah, that's impressive. I mean, you must have some lightning connections up there in the big woods from an internet side, too, to process that.
Yeah, just got what is it? The newer internet, the
fiber.
I'm drawing a blank. Fiber, yeah. And it's lightning fast.
What?
So, yeah.
I think it's
pretty good. I can upload a full podcast to YouTube in like 7 minutes, which before it used to take me overnight.
How the hell does he get fiber up there? We're like in the city down here.
That's wild.
We're still working on like dial-up.
You don't have fiber here.
No.
That is interesting. You would think, yeah.
I pay a lot of money for not great internet.
What's the difference between fiber and just like cables?
Oh, dude,
fiber's fast.
It's like gigabyte download speed.
It's just insane. A bigger cable?
I don't know what actually. Like,
I think it's a different type of connection.
Different type of cable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good for you, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, well, dude, catch us up on. It's funny. I was looking at our text message, and I was like, I haven't texted Beau since it was July. I was like, what the heck? Where did the season go?
What an asshole, Beau.
Yeah.
I know. He didn't even check in, ask me if I was being safe, how I was doing, none of that. I reached out to him and
that's not true.
He shot with you at Total Archery Challenge and was like, yeah, I'm done with him.
I'm going to take a wild guess and say there was at least one phone call in there in between, but let's just say
there was.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, I talked to, I'm assuming Jeremy's the one that responds mostly to Instagram. Yeah. So I've talked to Jeremy and I sometimes I thought maybe it could have been Jared. So I guess I don't know if that counts.
Hate to disappoint anyone. It ain't him.
That is a fun little guessing game on our Instagram. It's like, it could be anybody. It could be either one of us.
He does pop in on occasion and I'll go in and I'm like, did I write that?
Have you ever noticed that it's like the most, you'll be like, have a full conversation and then I'll just happen to see and then be like, yeah, I thought that was really funny. I'm like, it was funny. And that's all I'll say. And then I'm out. I do it to facilitate. I'm trying to facilitate, not cause mayhem.
Yeah, just keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. We get it.
But
that's funny.
Well, you were telling us before though, you flung some arrows this year.
Yeah, I've shot a decent amount of arrows this year. It was actually a really, really good season across the board and all the way from out west to whitetails and then even through rifle season, even though I didn't have anything other than doe tags, just family did really well and get to get to be a part of that. And it was kind of nice to be able to do so. And yeah, it's been a really good year so far.
That's awesome. And it started in, was Utah or Montana first?
That was Utah first. Yeah. I went to Utah, I think it was September 15th. So we got to go there and hunt. It was a completely different style of hunt than I'm traditionally used to as far as elk hunting. I got to go hunt on a private ranch that was full of elk, and that was
one of those fancy deals, huh?
Yeah, it was pretty sweet. And I was like, and it was funny. My next tag I had after that was in Montana, which was like one of the best elk tags that I had a draw tag there that I had up until that point. And I was like, man, is this going to ruin that experience after, coming off of this one? It didn't, but it was definitely different.
Was it?
Yeah. Just dealing with not having to deal with people is a big deal.
Well, because the ranch
fully act like elk
in Utah, like when you say it's a ranch, is privately owned type of a deal. So you're just not competing with other hunters. Basically, is the main thing.
Yeah, correct. And that was also outfitted too. So like it was the full deal as far as like, the guys know where the elk are for the most part. It doesn't mean it's like shooting fish in a barrel by any means, but it's like, it was just nice to know, like, you go into a spot and someone's not going to come in and screw you up or come running through, or you chase a bugle and it's, a guy that's blowing on this Primos tube or whatever it might be. So like that added a whole different element to it. And also it was interesting because their management style there was hunting bulls that were 7 years old or older.
Wow.
And so like for me, I'm looking at, as someone that's at that point, I'd killed one bull elk before that, and I've elk hunted a decent amount, but only ever killed one bull before that. And it was like, I'd see this nice 6-point. I'm like, shooter. And they're like, no, he's only 5. I'm like, what? Like, you got to be kidding me. Like this, I learned by the end of the trip how to definitely tell like the age class of elk as far as like, you just know it. It's kind of like with a whitetail when you see it. It's really the same thing, but just with me not spending as much time around elk as I have whitetails, it was a little bit more foreign to me. I was just looking at antlers and not, the body sizes, the blockiness, the way their bases are on their head, and just everything about them. When you see a really old bull, like, it's a really old bull once you see enough of them, I guess is how I'll put it.
Wow. How big was the property that you guys were hunting?
I can't say the exact number as far as the acreage. We weren't supposed to say that number, but it's very, very large.
Very large.
Size of some public pieces.
Yeah. And so, you've got plenty of room for multiple guys to be hunting in camp with you. Are you guys like staying in a traditional elk camp, or do you have like a lodge, or what's that look like?
That was a lodge with meals that were prepped for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and very bougie.
That's awesome, dude.
What a cool way to start the season, man.
No judgment from us at all, dude. I feel like you're
a bit envious.
That's
here,
awesome.
Honestly. Yeah.
Dude, it was awesome. I mean, like my other elk hunts that I've been on are either sleeping at the truck, coming back to the truck every night, or backpacking in and living off your back, not showering for 10 or 14 days. So to be able to have that, man,
wow,
give me that. I'll definitely take it. Like I enjoy the other aspects of the camping and all of that 100%. I love doing that. But man, like you give me access to something like that to have an experience, I'm all in on it.
Dude, I think like outside of I don't know if you call them luxury or things that like you can do yourself or like with enough experience or, just whatever, online training yourself. You can figure out how to call elk, and you can prepare meals for yourselves. And like, these are some of the services that an outfitter would offer you. But like people, a lot of them don't think about what about after I shoot one. Like the packing out of an elk is like, in my opinion, probably the biggest service that an outfitter offers when it comes to elk.
Oh, 100%. And the other thing too, like when I was telling people before I was going on this trip, they're like, "Oh man, that's going to ruin you and that's going to do this." And I'm like, I think it's all about how you frame your mind with it too, because like, all right, I'm not going to be able to, for at least the near future, to be go on hunts like that unless I'm invited on going with it. I can't pay that kind of money to go do that, and that's fine. But it's, to me, I looked at it as like, okay, I'm going to get to spend time around elk more so than I probably would in 10 years of hunting on public land and doing it. I want to use that to my advantage and learning the behaviors and learning what you can get away with, how you can move on them, all these different things. Like the amount of opportunity I got to be around elk is helped me immensely. And, even on the next trip, when I went to Montana, as far as slipping in on them and how their eyesight is and how their nose works and like all those different things, I think it's really, using your frame of mind with it. And it's funny because like the first elk hunt I went on was in 2016, and I'd read Cameron Haynes' book, Backcountry Bow Hunting. And I was like, man, I need to go as deep and steep and as far and as hard as possible, because that's where I'm going to, get into elk. And anymore, it's like, I tell people, if you have the financial means, man, I would go with an outfitter first and use it as an opportunity to learn. Even if you want to, go on your own, maybe you can't afford that every year, but if you can go with a good outfitter and be an active participant in that hunt versus just, being a baby in a stroller, getting along for the ride sort of deal, I think you can learn so much from that and help, ease that learning curve when you go and do it by yourself.
Yeah,
I agree.
Well, I think that's a big piece of it, because like the last thing you want to do is go out there and just have like a completely terrible experience. I mean, you do that and not many people want to come back and repeat that, chance.
No. And it's many
easy
people
to do. It's easy to do with elk too. Unlike whitetail, like usually you can trip into whitetail. I mean, I guess you can trip into elk too, but like if you're not on them, like you're not on them. You're not seeing anything. And you can go and have a lot of like couple of years in a row of miserable. My dad did his like, guys invite him and he's like, yeah, I guess I'll go. It's be fun, and they don't see anything. And then it's
for
just
7 days
and 7 years in a row, eventually it's like it wears on you.
Yeah. I mean, the first year I went elk hunting, like we got into elk, luckily. I mean, it wasn't, I did a lot of prep and trying to learn where to find them and stuff, but still like I didn't know anything when it came to elk hunting. And then, I think it was the next year after that, I decided I was going to go out for 14 days, and it took me 7 days to find my first elk. And it was like, oh, it was drier this year. So the places I was finding them in last time, all the grass was burned off. So there was no feed. And I ended up having to, that's where I learned the value in having many places e-scouted that were at different elevations and different locations in the unit so that I could bounce to easily, versus putting all my chips in one basket. As far as going, it's such a learning curve. And, there's a lot of things I think that apply from whitetail hunters that can do well with elk hunting, but there's also a lot of things that just don't, that are just different. And it's a different species that you're hunting. So, but I've really enjoyed, I love elk hunting. Like I'm obsessed with doing it. It's so much fun.
I mean, obviously between the three of us, I'm the naive one to elk hunting. Like I've been on one trip and it was in the eastern elk zone in Kentucky.
Self-guided.
Yep. I tripped into some elk, but I think the hardest thing for me, and I'd be interested in your guys' take on like a Western one, is like, dude, I had no idea when it was a guy bugling versus an elk bugling. Like no idea. And so like half the time I was like, that's got to be the guide that's with the other guy on the property we were hunting. So like I wouldn't call, and then like I would see those guys and I'm like, they didn't just move a mile and a half. Like I guess that was an elk. Like I don't know if it's like literally being able to hear the difference and I'm just not experienced enough on it or what, but it was a real struggle, because half the time I felt like I could have been more competitive for some of the elk that we were in if I was able to call more, but I didn't want to necessarily be calling at the other guy either, right? Because I don't want him like coming in on us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I there's sometimes I can hear a bugle from a guy and be like, oh, that's a guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's been other times when I've thought, oh, that's a guy, and this elk just has the worst sounding bugle ever.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, it it's actually kind of blown my mind of like, especially when you're in places where you're around a lot of elk. A few years ago, I was by myself, and I decided I was going to spend 21 days out there hunting elk, and backpacked in and got into a big herd. And there's a lot of bulls, mostly younger ones, but a lot of bulls total. And they all had their own bugle per se. And some of them sounded like guys, and because they were just sounded terrible. And then there's also really good callers. So honestly, I don't think I have a system of figuring it out totally yet. It's a long-winded way of saying that, but
I mean, have you run into guys, Beau? Like when you're like, okay, like, you know, I heard this bull bugle, like I'm going to start moving in. And then like, I don't know, you get somewhat close and you're like, shit, that's another guy.
well, I actually had a situation where in Colorado a few years ago, and I still talk to these guys on occasion. I ran into them. There was a real elk there bugling, and then I was bugling, and those guys were being silent, kind of moving in, and we ended up running. And then they started calling again, and the real bull slipped out, and you know, I snuck in on them like I was putting a stalk on, and I saw these two guys sitting up against a tree, and we ended up becoming buddies, and I've talked to them, you know, since then, and everything. So I've definitely run into that probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 times over the 5 or so years I've elk hunted out west.
Yeah, because I mean, you think about the space you're covering on public land, but I mean, there's also a lot of guys hunting, and especially when you talk about like a Colorado and then like an over to the counter type area or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, those places, even though there's so much land, there's also the people that are typically hunting elk in those places, especially in the mountains. Like they're a little bit more apt to get after it and kind of move a lot, and they're covering, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10 miles a day like you are. And at some point as you're moving around, you're going to run into each other.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, is Colorado going to a draw next year? Is that right?
I believe so. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I believe so. I don't know all the details of it. And I'm assuming, this is just my assumption, is like, because they started with some units going to a draw a few years back, and you can still get it with 0 points, but you still have to apply. So you just have to be a little bit more prepared. You can't just go to Walmart on your way out and pick up a tag per se.
Yeah.
So this year was Utah and Montana. Have you hunted either of these 2 states before?
No. Well, I hunted Montana before, but not the area that I had hunted Montana. It was a place I'd been wanting to hunt for a while, and I built up enough points so I could draw that versus normally getting kind of a general tag in places. So got to go there, and my cousin who I was hunting with had hunted it before, and he ended up killing a bull while I was sitting there behind the glass on day 4, and then it took until day 10, which was my last day, before I killed an elk.
Yeah. Was he kind of like, had he been in the area before? Was he kind of acting as a guide for you, or?
Yeah,
he had
been in the area before. He had never killed a bull there before. But he had some higher standards as far as with hunting elk, especially for someone that was newer to it, but he became a resident. So he's able to hunt the area more than, you know, someone that was a non-resident. And so he had spent some time there, kind of got to learn it a little bit. But actually the year that this previous year, there was so many people, and he hadn't experienced that before. It's changed some stuff with tag allocations and made it where, it took me a few years to draw the tag, and I thought it was going to be less pressure, but residents could get the tag every year, and that made it. And they must have increased it. I haven't looked into the numbers or anything yet, but there was so many people that it was like, I felt like I was in Colorado hunting over the counter, where it was. And that made it really tough to find, like, and it was like the deeper you went, there was just as many people as next to the roads. And it took us a little bit to figure out the sweet spot and the gaps that were just being overlooked that couldn't be seen from the roads. Cause it was an open type country spot, not a lot of dark timber, more open, is all spot and stock type hunting. And so it just took us a while to find those sweet spots and to be able to get away from people.
Wow. That was weird.
Wow.
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 Did you happen to talk to anybody while you were out there? I mean, any like ideas to why that might have been?
I mean, most of the people, all the people we talked to were residents, and they were kind of complaining about the non-residents, saying that they were increasing.
As always,
we literally saw 2 other non-residents. The rest were all residents that were there. So, and it was very. If you would just go off of the conversations we had, it was very doom and gloom. Where I still thought the hunting was good. Like I thought it was good. Like we found elk and we're able to get on them almost every day, at least spotting them with the glass. So like that was, to me, that's a win. Like,
and you guys both killed one, right?
Yeah. We both ended up killing. He killed a 7x7 and I killed what would have been a 6x6, but he broke off half of his beam the night before. I was in on 40 yards on him the night before, and the wind shifted and blew out. And then next day I got on him and noticed something looked weird. Well, he ended up losing half of his, or like the top part of his rack on that. So that was tough. But it was kind of funny when I killed that bull. I was really, really frustrated. Okay, so it's day 10, and I called them these 2 wannabe YouTubers that had like, they had this like super nice side by side, and they're filming, and they were just following me like everywhere.
Are you talking about us?
Like, I think that they had this podcast. It's called HUNTR, but they forgot, they couldn't spell hunter. I don't know. It's really weird.
Yeah,
but they were parking next to me, and I was like, okay, whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, it's public land. You can park wherever you want, but you got to understand, when you're hunting open country, like there's certain glassing spots that you can only see areas. And if I see somebody in a spot, it's like, okay, they're looking at this area, I'm going to move on.
That would be ethics.
I was visible from the road. Okay. So like I made myself visible when I heard them coming up so they could see me, and they just, sat 200 yards away from me, plopped down. I went to talk to them on the way out the first night. They didn't really care to talk to me. So I was like, all right. Next day, I was like, I got to make sure I'm there early before, well before light. So I was set up an hour before light, sitting on my glassing knob, and right after light, here they come in and waved at them, see them looking at me through their binos, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And I made a critical mistake of like, after I knew they saw me and they weren't leaving, I should have went over the hill so I wasn't skylit, so they couldn't see where I was pointing my spotting scope. But I found elk, but I don't think they could see them from where they were at. They were kind of around the side of the mountain, but I was staring at them for a while. And then my cousin wasn't seeing anything where he was at, so he came over, and he's like, hey, you got to get off this top of this ridge. Like I could see you where you're pointing for a ways away. And so I went over, and then I see these, and I saw one spike though kind of came up, and I'm like, he might be able to see that spike, but I don't think they could see the big bull and the herd of cows. They went in the timber, and all of a sudden I look over, and those guys dropped off the mountain. They're going in for a stalk, and I'm like, I said, damn it, like these assholes. And I'm filming the whole thing. It's hilarious. I don't know if I'll ever do anything with the footage, but I'm filming it through my spotting scope, and I'm narrating it, just being a complete asshole. Like it's like I'm going through it. They're filming each other, but the way that they were moving, I was like, they don't know where the elk are.
Yeah.
They're kind of still hunting, looking for them. And eventually about an hour and a half goes by. I'm just sitting back watching, and I see the kid kind of like knock an arrow, and I'm like, he's one drainage off, like he's not in the right spot. And then all of a sudden I see the kid go to full draw, and I got this on film, and I was like, what's he shooting at? I don't even see anything. And then I see him shoot, and that spike that was in there takes off running, and he missed it, and he stops again. And then the kid shoots again, and I think he must have missed it twice. But the spike ran, and I don't think he knew he missed it on the second one, or maybe he did hit it. I really don't know. And the spike runs into the rest of the herd, and then the big bull runs like a mile and a half, because they were a ways away, like where I was glassing at, and beds really close to the road. And then I moved in and put a stalk on and killed him.
Wow.
So like that was like karma working in a positive direction.
Did those guys, when you first encountered them, Beau, did they know who you were?
No, I don't believe so. It was in the dark, and I just had my headlamp on and was kind of walking. I don't think they do anyways. But
that freaking mullet and stash didn't give you away out there.
Pretty recognizable signature.
Come on.
I don't know. They
Come on.
didn't seem to want to talk, so maybe they didn't. If they did, they didn't like me or something.
I just hope that we can find their YouTube version of it sometime soon. How great would that be?
They're actually coming on later today. Yeah.
They're like, listen, this idiot was skylighted the whole time up here.
Yeah. I would love to find it because I was like, man, I felt like I wanted to go in like dad mode of like this, like they were younger kids, and I'm like,
you damn punks,
like this is not hunter etiquette. Like you don't do that. Like I was just
don't do that.
Yeah, I was so mad. Then when it ended up working out, I was just laughing. I was hoping I'm going to be packing this bull out and like get back to the truck and just, give him the thumbs up.
So you said I
didn't get to see him.
They had a side-by-side. Is that legal out there? Like you can do that on public or?
On forest roads. So like my truck, I could drive on the same road. So they were allowed to do that. And the roads were really rough. Like my truck was, I wish I would have had a side-by-side to be riding around in some of those places. But so that's what a lot of those people would do is they'd park in the areas that were like pretty good and then just take side-by-sides and roll up and down the roads and kind of hunt from there. So, and it was, I was joking about the karma thing, but like the day before we'd found this like just absolutely magnum bull and figured he was coming from this one spot, and there was a lot of people hunting him where we first saw him at, and he had spooked out of this drainage, and I'm like, this seems like a hidden gem spot, and we were going to move in on it, and it was like high 90s that day, and it took everything I had to like want to hike into that spot in the middle of the day, but I was like, I think it could be worth it. So we get down to the spot we're going to park, and this guy pulls in a side-by-side just before us. He gets in there, and him and his kid get out. And so I just pull up next to him. I said, hey, how's it going? And are you guys planning on hunting in here? He said, yeah, we're going to be hunting in here. And it wasn't in the spot that I was going to, but I would have had to walk through there. And I was like, I'm not going to do that, especially, with, kid there. And like, I'm not going to, that's not showing good hunter etiquette. So I was just like, you know what? It is what it is. We'll try another day if they're not there. And for a while after that, I was like, maybe I could have found a way around them without screwing it up. But then after it all worked out, I was like, maybe that was being rewarded for, just letting them.
Dude,
go.
that's tough. Like, even when we talk about like where you're at and doing most of your deer hunting and stuff, it's like, most parking areas, especially during the rut or gun season, like they've got people there. And so it's like, there's a fine line between etiquette of like, okay, I'm not going to go in there and ruin someone's hunt, or, it's early enough or whatever. Like if that guy's sitting 100 yards off the road, like that's his problem. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I think that's the hardest part. And I mean, I think even still, like there's some guys that you run into. Like I remember when Corey went out to Illinois and like he walked by a guy at like 100 yards, the guy was just like teed off, and you'll have those people. But I think most people, you kind of just have to expect it. It's part of being on public land.
Yeah. And I don't think there's like a perfect, like, I don't think there's a way of just laying it out. Like, okay, if this happens, you do this, or this, if they're here, you do that. Like, cause you don't know a lot of times, especially with deer hunting when they're in a tree. It's like, you pull up to a trailhead or a gate. It's like, sometimes it's like very obvious of like, all right, I saw this stand get put here. This guy is parked here. I would have to walk past that. I'm not going to do that. Yep. But then it's like, okay, there's a gated road that goes for 3 miles back here. He could be anywhere there. Well, I'm going to go in until I see a reason to believe that, I could be screwing that guy up.
Yeah. That's what I did last Friday when I was up here on the mountain. There were a couple spots I had in mind. I knew where I wanted to go, but I'm like, if there's a car or two there, like, I'm probably just not going to waste my time. Like, I don't want to mess those guys up. I'll just go somewhere else, and fortunately that spot I got to, and there had been no signs of anybody like the last 2 days, but it's like, there's certain situations that I think, you just have to use your best judgment on it. And I wouldn't be surprised, dude, on the karma side that comes back of, just kind of saying, hey, you guys have this spot, I'm going to go over here.
Well, you've got the right demeanor and stuff for it too. I mean, you're not like, you can tell when somebody is like, has like their aggressive stance or just the way that they approach a situation. You're like, oh, this could be trouble here. I can't remember the last time that and I tried to do the same thing. And because of that, I can't remember the last time I had a real negative interaction with somebody in the woods.
Mine have been positive. I mean, some of them have been funny in that, like, and I don't know about you, Beau, but like, at least local people here know who we are, obviously from podcasts, but know my truck. And so like I've been on public land where I've come out and there's been guys at my truck and I'm like, hey, can I help you? And they're, just want to shoot the shit basically, which is fine. And that's, I have no issues with that. It does then not freak me out, but it puts me on edge of like, man, they know where I'm at. Right. And they also know, whether from this podcast or just my history, like I'm not in there killing a 2-year-old. Like, there's a reason I'm parked there and hunting in
He's in there killing nothing.
Yeah, I'm killing nothing. Joke's on you.
It's that part of it is I dislike that part, and my truck is very recognizable too. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to get a decoy vehicle next year and not share anything on social media with it, because it's like, and that's why it's so hard, because with what we do, sharing things is important to want to help people and seeing what you're seeing and sharing it and all that different stuff. But I don't post anything on the days that I actually am hunting in certain places. I do it out of order. It's like, I've had to play these games because I've run into those situations or find out after the season, like, oh, this guy's said you've been parking here a lot, or you've been doing this and you were sharing this story. Is that where that's from? And I'm like, oh, dang, like, it's just, and it's honestly, it's like my spots aren't anything spectacular versus where you could find anywhere else. It's just, but then you add pressure in because people think that there's a giant in there or whatever. Then it changes that whole dynamic of it. But I will tell you a funny situation that we had with running into a hunter. I was in West Virginia hunting with Josh and those guys, the Untamed, and we were going in on a piece of public, and it was a long hike back in there. It was over 2 miles back and like an actual 2 miles back. And we get to the spot where we're going to glass and at this old valley fill there. And we get back and it's a little bit before light yet. And I'm like, I see something like a shape sitting on the ground, and we kind of get closer and it's this old man that's sitting there cross-legged on the ground with his bow, arrow nocked, just sitting there. And he looks at Josh and he goes, you guys part of that Facebook group? And
you guys here for the gangbang?
Yeah. And Josh is like, I don't know what you're talking about, or like, what Facebook group? He's like, oh, you know what I'm talking about. You have like 10 of you guys that come in here. And the guy was like pretty, then after Josh started talking to him about coal mining and like kind of, the guy came off the edge and we're like, hey, we're not here to screw you up. You were here first.
You were like, hey, listen, we're not the hunting public.
Yeah. We're like, hey, it was actually funny because those guys were there too.
I know. I figured I saw Zach and those guys.
The guys you're looking there, they went that way. They're flanking in from your left here.
So like the guy, we're just like, hey, if you wouldn't mind just telling us kind of what your plan is so that we can all hunt and, not screw each other up. If you're planning on working your way out this way, we won't go there, whatever. And the guy at the end of the conversation, like he would go in these waves of like being okay and like happy to then he was like angry because he ran into somebody, that sort of deal. And like he would say like, oh, I've never seen anybody back in here before. And Josh would be like, well, I grew up here. I've hunted here my whole life. And, a bit. And the guy's like, well, I've actually only been in here the last couple of years, sort of deal. Mm-hmm. And then the guy was just at the end of it. He's like, you know what? He's like, this is America. We're free to do whatever you want. So you do whatever you want, and I'm going to do whatever I want. We're like, oh, okay.
So are you going down there or not?
So we just let him go. We're like, all right, we're not going to go into this spot because he's there, but we'll just sit back up here and see kind of what he's doing because we can watch this guy kind of move. And all of a sudden we see this nice, probably 3 or 4 year old 8-point come up, and he's working his way right up towards this guy. And this guy's just sneaking along, kind of still hunting. And I'm like, I said, they're going to run right into each other. I'm like, there's no way this guy can't see this buck. And I'm like, I don't think he can, or that he's seeing it. The buck comes up about 75 yards away from this guy, sees the guy, starts walking right at him. And the guy, eventually the buck gets about 30 yards from him, literally no joke, 30 yards from this guy. And he's just stands still and doesn't move. And the guy's like glassing around, looking, doesn't see him, keeps walking. The buck goes right behind him, gets on the logging road or the coal road that guy was on, and goes the opposite direction. So they just passed each other and headed back out. And we were like rooting for the guy. I'm like, man, this guy I think he said he was like 77 years old.
Dang.
Hiked all the way back in there. We were like rooting for him to shoot this deer, and but unfortunately he had no idea. He had no idea. So unless he watches the Facebook group, he probably won't know that it ever happened.
Yeah, he'll be like, "This spot's all for you boys. There ain't shit back here."
Yeah.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Lone Wolf Custom Gear.
Man, Jared, we are tree stand fanatics, and I think the one thing that we have learned over all these years is to kill big bucks, we got to be mobile. We've been hunting out of lone wolves for many years, the original lone wolf, and then obviously with the custom gear stuff, we're using the 0.5 and the 0.75. Yeah. And the one thing that we talked about is like, what if there were no cables? Here we are.
I really just don't know how you can beat it, frankly. But, you know, a lot of that came, too, from a relationship that we've built with the DeQuistos. We've had both Cody and Andre on the podcast a few times. The passion for hunting, the outlook on the sport and stuff, I think is eye to eye with how we look at it. Everything that has gone into building this brand and to building these tree stands is something that we want to be a part of.
This is the 40th anniversary of these guys creating tree stands that have been critical to how we hunt whitetail deer today. If you look over the past, you'll see Andre's designs being implemented across so many stands over the years. Such a cool thing, but really has changed the way that we all hunt whitetail deer from above now.
Right now, you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, to get 7% off anything on the entire website. Be the lone wolf.
Yeah, it's funny, man. I mean,
And there's something awesome, though, about seeing a guy like, I don't know, over 60, over 70 especially, still out there.
That's awesome.
Bow hunting, still hunting and stuff. And I don't mean still hunting, still hunting.
With a vertical bow too, like like it was, like it was.
That's America.
It was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's America. Mm-hmm. You would love most of the people that I've met down there. My buddy had moved to West Virginia, and my college roommate, and he started hunting there and started meeting some people, and some of these older guys. Like every one of them goes, "Are you a hunter?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You a bow hunter?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "No, are you a bow hunter?" Like these guys would get mad, like, you better not be using a crossbow sort of deal. And he's like, no, I use a regular bow. And they're like, okay, good.
Is this in the bow only counties or elsewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there, can you use a crossbow in the bow only counties of West Virginia?
I believe so.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know that for fact. I know people do, but I would imagine that you can.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's, the rumor of those counties they're tough counties. Like people wise, especially if you're not from there. Yeah,
they're some of the nicest people I've ever met that I've met there, but there's also some that really don't want any outsiders in there, and that's just that's the nature of it. Luckily, knowing Josh and then also a buddy of mine that I've met through, he came to my scouting camp. He's a state trooper in that area. He's kind of given me the lowdown of where not to park at. So like, especially if you're on public pieces, because like we had a lease down there for a while. So I've hunted private, I've hunted public, and even on the private places, like you don't park in certain areas that you can still get messed with. So it's it's a completely different world. That's for sure.
You said that you missed one down there?
Yeah, I did.
What happened with that?
Yeah. Dude,
tell me about
excuse
it.
Other than
I just mean tell me about the situation. Like what happened?
Yeah. So it was funny. I was by myself that day. Josh had just tagged out, and I was with him on that day, and I was like, hey, I'm just gonna go check out this place. Sorry, kind of by myself.
If I can, just to set the context, you guys were just like still hunting, or were you like calling, or what was the play?
That was the one Josh shot in the rain.
Yeah. Yep. I was sitting behind the spot and scope.
It
when he shot that.
That's sloppy, dude. It looked real sloppy.
Oh, we couldn't see for 12 hours or 10 hours of the daylight because it was so fogged in, and it wasn't really actually raining. It was just so much fog that created that moisture that felt like it was raining all day. But so mostly what we're doing, just to give everyone context, is like either glassing or still hunting or ambush style, but I wasn't hunting from a tree other than one day. Most of the time I was hunting on the ground. So glassing, like old reclaimed coal mines that you can kind of see a little ways, but it gets pretty thick with autumn olive bushes, which for anyone that doesn't know, they're like, think of like mountain laurel, the way it kind of grows up. It's really difficult to see into, creates good bedding. It's just super thick. And I was going into this spot, I'd never been there before, and Josh kind of gave me some tips like, hey, you know, there's this spot I've never checked out, but you know, we've ran into a lot of people in this area, so I could see deer hanging out here. See if you can find a way to see down into it. And I was kind of struggling finding a good glassing vantage point to see into it, but I got to a spot and I could see what looked like some chasing going on, but it was so thick I could just see bodies running around. And I'm like, all right, I need to get a better vantage point. And I started walking back up to like get to the main ridge to walk out to hit another finger ridge. And I got up there and there was like a food plot that like the game commission puts in. And I'm like, when I remember walking in the dark being like, there isn't a deer there is not a mature buck that would ever walk through this in daylight, you know? I get up and I'm walking this grassy trail and I'm like, I should just look into that. And it's like 9 o'clock in the morning. I walk over and I look and there's like 145 inch 8-point, 140 to 145 inch 8-point, just strolling through the middle of it, just on cruising. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I thought I was seeing something funny, and he's only 50 yards away from me at that point, but it's really thick there. Like there's no shooting to get to that plot edge. So I was like, all right, he's heading for this corner. I'm going to see if I can beat him down there. And I got part of the way there and realized I couldn't beat him. So I got into the woods and tried calling, and I think he was gone by that point. And so I got down and I found his track and started tracking him in the mud. And I saw where he jumped down into that. He went over the bank and down into that bottom that I was looking at earlier where all the rut activity was. So I was like, all right, well, I can either find another vantage point to look at him, or I know that he's in there, or I can just try to get in the mix of it and get down in there. So I decided to go down, drop down lower elevation, probably a couple 100 feet down, get in there. And I'm just walking down this old road and I hear what sounded like bucks fighting, but it was so soft that it almost sounded like squirrels just like making a bunch of racket. And I'm like, I don't think any squirrels could be down in here because there's not really any big trees. There's no oak trees. It's just like scrub shit everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe that is bucks. And I kept getting in my head like, no, like I'm not hearing anything else other than this like this tingling. So I took a few more steps and I heard hoofs like kind of like, you know, kind of jump. And I'm like, oh man, maybe I spooked them. So I moved a little bit closer and I just started grunting. And then all of a sudden I hear crashing and that buck came running in and I went to full draw and he was like 23 yards. And I went to stop him with my mouth because he was moving pretty good. And he didn't stop. And for some reason, I couldn't explain it to you right now, but I hit the trigger and just panic punched it and I shot right underneath him. Like, I mean, just right underneath him. It was 20, like, I feel like I could have made a lot of mistakes and still made that shot happen, but I missed him and he ran out. And the other buck he was fighting, which was also another good buck, 9-point, came running through and they just were still grunting, didn't know what happened. And they're working in this direction. So I ran up the hill, could hear them grunting in the thick stuff. And I just decided, I was like, I'm just going to sit here. There's a bunch of bedding around, a lot of briars, a lot of thicket. I'm like, I've learned down there that you look at this country and it all look the same. But when you find these like briar thickets inside of those places, it's like, that's where they really like to take the does and just kind of keep them in there. So I sat right on the edge of that and I just sat on the ground and I had a doe come within like literally 6 feet of me. Like I could have reached out and grabbed her and she went and bedded 8 yards away from me. And then a 4-point came in pretty close. He saw me, wasn't really sure what I was and he didn't spook, but he just kind of moved off. And I sat there the rest of the day, and I didn't see anything else other than the doe that was bedded there when she'd get up every few hours to feed. But yeah, that one really hurt as far as it was just such a chip shot. And I'd been shooting pretty dang good. Now I did miss another buck earlier in the year, but that was just from me misjudging yardage. But like, I felt really good about my shot process this year, like being calm, being mentally there. And I was not in that situation, like just totally just flubbed it. So
yeah, well, we've all been there, dude. I mean, it's just so easily can get in your head. I mean, I don't know. First of all, was that shot on or was that hunt on that cold country film you put out?
No,
that was last year.
That was last year.
That was from last year. Yep.
And did you film all this stuff? Will that be out eventually?
I did not actually. No, I didn't film that.
Okay.
Yeah, me self-filming is really, really bad. I don't ever turn it on when I need to have it, or I just make some dumb mistake. But I filmed the process of it in the day, but I didn't get the shot on camera.
Yeah. I guess what I was gonna say is like it happens so quickly. Like I felt the same way as in terms of like preparation. I just felt rock. So I have for the past couple of years, ever since I got out of that target panic funk, I was like, man, I'm good. Like not cocky, but I'm like I can make these shots happen. And I haven't wounded a deer and not got them in quite some time now. I think it's like so you get enough momentum there, and then I don't know if you saw that Iowa hunt. We filmed it. I was self-filming that case, and you can see how it all went down there. Part of which was me shaking like a leaf, And it's not like I get shaky on the. I don't feel shaky like when I'm making the shots, but like I rushed the crap out of that shot too. Like I just basically, I don't know how you explain it other than panic. Like, there's things you expect it to go a certain way. It's not panic in the sense that it's target panic, just panic in the sense of like, I need to get this arrow in that deer as soon as possible. Like he's going to smell me, something's going to happen, something's going to go wrong. It needs to be off my string here. I
think that's almost like more of, I don't know if there's a difference, but I think there is a buck fever versus target panic of like, in that same type of situation, it was like, if looking at it from a clear mind, it was like the next 40 yards that he could move laterally still keeps him within 30 yards of me.
Yeah,
and
you're
it's wide
thinking
open.
About this
It's
scenarios.
wide open.
Exactly.
And I tried to stop him at the only opening at the very beginning, and he didn't stop. And for some reason, I hit the trigger, and it was like,
panic.
What is your? Yeah, it's like I just like completely lost all function of my body and brain, and just and what I don't know, I must have dropped my arm or something, because even then I think I still would have killed him, but I hit low, and it was like I have a 25-yard top pin and he was at 23 yards. Like that is the ideal situation. And
Well,
it is buck fever. That's what it is.
Well, in retrospect on yours, and I'd be curious on your side too, Beau, is like, do you think you said you rushed your shot. Do you think you just weren't anchored correctly?
No, I was anchored solid. Yeah, for sure.
Just because you would have had to like pull it.
I mean, I'll say what it was for mine, and then Beau can reciprocate. It was like you in your mind are trying to get ahead of what he's doing. Mm-hmm. So as you're reading his movement and also his demeanor and everything, you're in your mind trying to piece together the perfect time to draw,
anticipating his next move,
the timing of the shot, and how it's going to release. Whether you have to stop him and all that. And so with mine, and I'm not going to blame it on this, but like just to paint the picture, like in my mind, like what I was feeling at the moment was we had just got there. Like there was no acclimation period at all. And there was a lot of excitement, like right out of the gate, where it's just like, you almost expect to, or hope. It's like, obviously it'd be great to kill one the first day, but you're like, you don't expect to. You're like, I'm just going to get in there. I'm going to get my spot. I'm going to get settled. I'm going to figure out how this tree is going to work for me and stuff. And, I couldn't get into the tree that I originally wanted to. So there's things like that. They're just kind of like, I'm disheveled a bit. We just drove whatever it was, 15 hours to get there. And so all that was like, has you on the fritz a little bit to begin with. And so, or throws you off your balance, I guess. And then, so when I first saw the deer, he was, 60 to 70 yards, like up the tree line. And it's an edge. There's nowhere he can go other than if he were to dunk into the timber up there for no reason, or there's a scrape right in front of me. It's like he's coming right down the thing here. It's like it couldn't be any more cookie cutter, frankly. And so he does. Here he comes. He does the thing. That's the deer. Holy crap. And there's, I think, a realization that you have when it's a deer that that you're like, I'm going to kill him. It's like, that's him. I'm going to kill him. It's going to happen. And then it's like, you start getting the early, like, oh boy, like he's already in the truck type of a thing. And what happened with him was he got to the scrape and he's only there for a few seconds. And I'm analyzing the situation. And in my mind, I'm like, what if he just takes this trail straight in? And I'm pretty close to the property line. I'm like right in this little corner of this inside field here. And I'm like, that'd be bad. Like if he turned and went like this, the tree is in front of me and I hung it out of a hang on like a Neanderthal. And it's an inside joke for Beau there. And so if he turns and comes in this trail, it's going to be really challenging for me to get drawn with him at like 18 yards there. And it's going to be a quartering two shot. It's going to have to happen quick. The alternative is he just continues on down into the inside here he's broadside at 20 yards. And in my mind, I'm like, I can't risk him taking this trail into the timber. I need to draw while his head's in the scrape. I think he's distracted. Even though he's facing me, he's distracted. And so I make that decision and I start and I get quarter drawn and he just stops. And in the moment, I felt like he saw something. Like it wasn't like he looked right up at me, but he just stopped enough that I was like, oh boy. And so at that point, a lot of the shaking you see and stuff is because
you're holding it like quarter
draw. It's because I'm at quarter draw.
Yeah. You're not actually like shaking.
That's hard.
Nerves.
Yep. And so at that minute, panic sets in and I'm like, I blew it. I'm like, it came all the way. Oh, everything flashed up before your eyes. And like, I blew it. He saw me. And so I'm there at quarter draw for, I don't know, you watch the video. And much to my surprise or, content, he just turns. He stopped hitting the scrape for whatever. He just didn't hit it nearly as long as I thought he was going to.
Yep. And
he starts walking that trail at 20 yards, didn't turn in. And I think just out of disbelief, I'm like, I can't believe he didn't blow out of there. I yank it back. And at that moment, I'm like, so ready for it to be over. Like so much had transpired in that 10, 15, 30 seconds, whatever it was, that I was like, this arrow needs to be gone. He needs to be dead now. And same thing. He could have walked another 15, 20 yards and it would have been great. I could have easily stopped him at a certain point or whatever, but I panicked. You know what I mean? Put it on brown and let it go. And I hit him back and high and got lucky. In my case, I hit the artery probably that runs under the spine. And frankly, couldn't have gone any better because he trotted off 20 yards and fell over stone dead. which
I was gonna say because the way you were telling the story, like it was gonna go bad, but I was like, I hadn't watched the video yet, but I knew that you had killed a big one. Both you guys did, and I was like, where's he going with this? I thought that was night one, but
there were so many ways it could have gone wrong. And I mean, it's like, you can't write that stuff, even if I'd hit him double lung, like he could have run and jumped across the fence and we would have been in a getting permission situation to recover him type thing. But as soon as I shot, I mean, I was coherent. It's not like I black out when that happened. It's like, I saw it. I knew exactly where I hit. I'm like, bad hit, not a good hit. I'm like, guts. And in my mind, I'm like, lethal hit. So I'm like, you're that mixture of you're like, God, yes, but also bad shot, guts.
Yeah.
And so for him to run over there, and what really was like made it a weird situation was he stopped directly behind this giant walnut tree, massive. In fact, it was the tree I wanted to get in originally, but there was just no way. I mean, I threw my 10-foot strap around it and I was still like this. There's just no way. So, and I'm maybe 18 yards off of it now. And so he runs and stops directly behind it. And, it's not like I see him go over like this, but I see him go down. Like I know that he went down. I'm like, I don't know if he bedded or like it seemed like there was a bit of a thud there, but I'd just seen me shoot him in the guts. So I was like perplexed I'm like, what's happening? Why did he do that? And I can't see his head at all. I can't see really anything. With my harness, I'm leaning as far as I can out to one side. and I can see like just a bit of hoofs, like laying there. And I lean way to the other side and I see just butt, like just a little bit of his butt. And I'm like, after a while, I mean, maybe it took me 10 minutes of like thinking. I'm like, he's down, he's there. Eventually, I'm like, I don't know. I gotta call Jeremy. Like, I gotta get some input. That's what I said on camera. I was like, I gotta see. So I called you and I like described the situation. I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like,
I didn't have a good answer for
I shot him. Here's what happened. He's right there. I don't know. I can't see his head is the main thing. I'm like, I can't tell if it's a gut shot and he just like, maybe he's just not pressured at all. Maybe he's just like, he just laid down there and he's like, boy, what was that? But
it was the laying out of the hoofs versus like, I mean, when a deer beds, they want them kind of tucked up close to them, and him laying them out like that was kind of
and not a movement, not anything.
Like literally fell over stone dead.
I didn't time it, but I guess I probably stayed in the tree for about a half hour to 45 minutes, maybe. Just like it was a good situation in that like he's bedded on the property there and probably dead, but like if not,
it was early too.
I shot him at 3:15. I hung the stand at 1:30 or whatever, shot him at 1:15 or 3:15. So eventually I got down and I crept down fully prepared to put another arrow in him. As soon as I got to the base, knocked another arrow, and I just took a few real easy steps out to the side, just not drawn, but ready to if I needed to. And sure enough, he's just laying there toast. And that was
wild.
That was it. But to the buck fever thing, it was. So
you were anchored.
It was a moment of panic. I was absolutely anchored. That
you just had to, because you pulled right. So you either.
I don't think I pulled. I think I just wasn't aiming as good as I didn't execute the shot as good as I should have.
And he was moving too. You didn't.
He was moving. Yeah, from right to left. So
yeah, Beau, I'm not sure about yours. Like, if you have that 25-yard pin, like how, like you said, you either had to like almost be like, because the normal drop, and I've seen it from a lot of guys, is like almost as the arrow's releasing, they're looking to see where it hit.
Yeah.
Like to come up, right? Because
that must have been what I did. Like that's
the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I could. I mean, because when it went, like I was saying, like I was a little bit disheveled, but I knew right away where I missed him at. Like I can replay that arrow in my mind 100 times, and I was like, dude, I shot. I mean, just like right under his armpit, like right across there, and I'm like, dang it! And it was like nothing I could do at that point. And I did, like I said, I had missed one in PA before I killed mine. Exactly a week. I think it was a week earlier. It was October 25th. I had the best October that I'd ever had. I felt really good about my setups and like the scouting, and like I was on some good deer, and the weather just cooperated with me as far as for that mid to late October time frame. And it's super cold morning. I was hunting a buck in there, a deer bigger than anything I'd ever killed really anywhere. And I had a doe getting chased around by a small buck. I'm like, oh man, sweet. October 25th, I've got some chasing going on and everything. And I'd kind of fine-tuned my setup a little bit and felt really good about it. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, nothing's going to come across this wide open herbicide sprayed cut. And because it's just wide open. Just figured, normally where these deer would run, especially the mature bucks, is on this corner, but inside the cover. So I was like inside the cover with just an off wind. And all of a sudden I look up and I see the biggest buck in the area and probably another shooter that was with him, 5-year-old deer, both running right at me across this wide open cut. Like they just sprayed it. So there's not even any browse or he's just coming across. And the big one is snort wheezing at the other one, kind of chasing him off over that hot doe had come through. And they get in and he's kind of running around. And I'm like, holy shit. Like they're right behind me. I twist around and I had my GoPro up on the tree here and I turned it on. But apparently when I went to draw, I hit it and I knocked it off to the side. So you just get a video of me shooting, not the actual. Otherwise, the deer would have been in frame and everything.
Wow.
And so anyways, this buck, he goes off to the side and I was like, okay, that's like 35 yards. And I didn't And the thing is, this is the thing about you have more time a lot of times than you think you do. But I thought, because he took a few more steps, he's in these hemlocks and he's out of kind of my life.
Yeah,
like
he's
he heads
gone
towards the scrape that's 60 yards in front of me. Like he's gone there. And that's kind of the way the doe had went. And I was like, worried about it. After I went up and looked, he was standing because there was like a small, he could have probably hopped over it, but like a blowdown, but he was kind of just stood there. And I probably had more time to pull out my rangefinder, but I'm like, I think I actually was already at full draw at that point. And I'm like, all right, 35 yards. And I have the 2 pin, well, I have 3 pins on like the vertical, it's on the dialed sight, but they're fixed pins depending on your speed of your bow, which they're a little bit more spread apart than I would like to have. So it's like, okay, my top pin's 25, my second one's 42, and I can't remember what the bottom one is off the top of my head. But I was like, all right, I pin gap those 2. I should be pretty good. Aiming a little bit closer to the bottom side, and I'm like, all right, he's there. Put it about third to halfway up on his body. And I shoot, and I mean, I was rock solid, and I see the arrow go right underneath him again. And I'm like, this was before that other one. And I'm like, what the heck? And he didn't know what happened. He just kind of moved around. And I was grabbing another arrow, and the other buck spotted me and blew, and they took off. And I ranged it, and it was 42 yards. Oh. It was exactly where it was at. I mean, this was like left and right, absolutely perfect, just underneath there. And I was just like so sick to my stomach. And the problem was where I definitely made a big mistake here was I had ranged that tree 3 times that morning.
I was going to ask
why it didn't come in my mind that that's what the yardage was in that moment still pisses me off. Like I should have known that, and I didn't. And he ran off, and that was it. So I don't know if he made it through rifle season, but he spent a lot of time in the area. He ended up breaking his G2 off.
Giant though.
Phenomenal deer. Like, dude,
the ranging thing is funny because I'm sure most of us listening to this do that same thing. Like, I'll get in the tree, especially if it's a new one, like you're mobile hunting or whatever. I get in, as soon as it gets light, just make sure nothing's moving. And then as quick as I can, I start ranging like 35, 27, and wherever. Yep. Usually find your sweet spot. Like if it's like, hey, I think most of my shots are going to be here, I set my single pin to 25 or 20, whatever it is. And then like in the moment, especially if it's outside of that core, like I think they're going to be here and I'm already, my dial is already set for it. There is a bit of panic that sets in. Particularly like I see it in like the wood settings, because it's like, if there's nothing to slow them down, unless they're like heading for a scrape, if they're literally just cruising through, it's like I've got this window to range, change my dial, and set in. And to your point, Beau, I think you have a lot more time, but the moment that the clock starts, it immediately is going faster in your head than you think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it does.
And it was just like, and the thing was like this deer, I mean, honestly, I'm not even worried about like, I maybe I had more time, but I don't think I needed more time. I just need to know what the range was. I should have known that from like, cause he was literally like a pinball coming through that area. So I don't know what he was going to do next. He could have came right to the base of my tree, or he could have went back where he came from. So it was very, I didn't know. And that's the thing, like with the rut, and I've never ranged a deer before I've shot him. Like actually like been like, okay, 29 yards. Let me get this dial in there. It's like, I do what you said. Like I range things ahead of time, and it's like, okay, if anything's within this window, I just put that top pin on him and he's done. And then he gets out here. Okay, I'm going to need a pin gap. And I practice all this stuff. So it's like, it wasn't, I was super confident in the shot. It's just, I'm not like a huge draw length of 28 inches. My arrow's not super heavy or anything, but my bow's not like screaming fast that's going through there. So there's going to be some drop, even a 7-yard difference to being off can have an impact at that distance. So,
well, the way you guys are describing it, I'm assuming you do the same thing. We just haven't said it like this yet. I think that like when I'm ranging stuff, when I first get in there, it's to get points of reference for, in my mind, it's a ring.
Like a dead ring.
It's a ring.
Yeah.
Like,
That's exactly exactly.
I'm not like, oh, that's 26. Like, so,
I'm not ranging something that's at 82 to just know it's out there. Like, it does me no good.
Well, it's just like, it's not like, okay, if he's by that stump, I know it's 26, or if he's by that tree, that's not as relevant as once I establish those points, that I'm like, okay, that's the 20-yard ring. And then I look around and I'm like, okay, there's the ring. And I do it to like 20, 30, and 40. Generally, if they're over 30 yards, I'm not going to shoot at it without ranging it, more than likely. Yeah. So, but that helps to have the ring and to know where they're at. And then once they're there, and then if I'm like, hey, based on the situation here, they're likely to be between 20 and 30.
Yeah.
Then I'll set it at 25.
I think it's similar. I'm a big reference point guy. Like, and part of it is I guess I'm envisioning, and again, how many times does it actually happen? But I'm envisioning he's coming through here. There's my shot. It's this tree 37 and this tree's 25. And but I'm setting. Usually, I'm trying to find my happy medium. Like if we're using like just single pin dowel sights, but like if it's I might set at 27, knowing like I can really kill that deer at 15 with it being on 27. I'm just gonna aim a little bit low, right? Like that's my mindset. I am referencing a couple, like maybe it's a scrape at 40 or something, because if he's going to that, I'm going to 40, and then I mentally will adjust if he doesn't do that.
Here's one last one to make you feel better about yourself, Beau. This is a point of reference one here. When I was probably, I don't know, let's say I was 15 years old, we were running late to the stand, and I came over this rise, and I know I was running late because it was like plenty light. Like it was like, it was a morning hunt, but it was plenty light. Like I could see everything. And I come over this like little rise, and it exposes this back field here. And I see this big, in hindsight, was probably like a 140-inch 10-point, like 3-year-old 10-point. But I mean, 15 years old, I was like, that's mega giant. And so I just bit the dust, and it would have been like early November probably, just based on the demeanor and stuff. And this is where experience probably later on, I would have known to adjust better. I was like, I just kind of plopped down and was like, I just need to call it this thing. I needed to get over here without, had I known, I would have like turned to the side to set up for a right-handed shot and gotten in a way where I, would be able to execute on it. But I just like plopped down. I was probably like this. I was probably like, and the deer was probably right ahead of me. And I grunted at the thing. I probably didn't even like look up again to check. I just like, and I look up, and he's like stiff-legged walking right over to me. Broad open field, nothing. Just like cool season grass fields laid down. He was at, I don't know, 60 yards, 80 yards maybe the first time I grunted at him. And here he comes. He's at 40, whatever, closing. And there's nothing. There's just nothing. And I felt like he was so, I don't know. I think that I just didn't take the time to range. Probably, like I said, it was just my inexperience or whatever. And I just thought I could do it. And the thing is standing there broadside all of a sudden. So all I have to do is I get up just onto my knees or whatever. And he's right there. He's standing broadside. And I hold for 30. I think he's 30 yards. That's just my guess. And I thunk right over his back. The thing was standing there. After I walked it off later, he's just standing there at like 18 yards. I'm like, what a heartbreak. There's nothing that should have prevented me from shooting that deer other than just me not taking the time to set up for it.
Dude,
right and range
what
it.
a tool though rangefinders are. Like I remember being young and like in the tree stand being like, okay, that's 20. And then like
Did you tie ribbons back in the day?
No, because mainly I was hunting like edges of soybean fields or stuff like that. And so like I remember like looking at this bean field and whatever, like a button buck would come out and I'm like, all right, that's 25 yards. And like I'd shoot and it'd be like like right underneath it. And like eventually like my dad and I'd be like, yeah, I missed him. He's like, that's like 42 yards, And in my head, I didn't like, you're just trying to visualize there's this deer in a field. And, like even when I was practicing, like sighting in, I was stepping it off. I'm like stepping 20 steps or 25, whatever. So like you're watching this deer come in the field and you're like, yeah, that's 25, right? And it's 42 or whatever. And it's like, I couldn't tell you how many deer from the time I was 13 to, I don't know, 20, probably 21 before I got my first rangefinder that I just completely misjudged distance. Like not even close.
Yeah, man. Like, and I'm so bad at open like fields and stuff judging.
It's hard.
Oh, like it is so hard to do. Like, I feel like just like when I guess both elk that I'd shot, it was the first one was 36 yards, and I had range right before that. The tree that I had a feeling he could move to. He was raking a tree, and I was like, all right, he's heading this direction. Ranged it so that I didn't range the actual elk. But then the one in Montana, I shot at 67 yards. So that was like, obviously, it's like ranging, dial, and shoot sort of deal. But it was just like, and I had so much confidence, like after making, those shots, and like, I'm like, oh, whitetail in here, no, they said 42 is a poke at a whitetail. Don't get me wrong. Like, but I had so much confidence, and when I just just missed, I was just like,
did you make really good shots on both those elk?
Yeah. Well, the first one, I was a little bit far forward, so it took a little bit to be able to find him, but ended up being able to get. It was just like I hit him. He was quartered away, and I hit him just a little bit too far forward, and but having my broadhead was stuck in there and ended up killing him not too long after. But nonetheless, it was just. I still felt good about, like, I hit where I aimed. I just aimed a little bit too far forward on it as far as where he was quartered to. And then the other bull, I watched him fall after running about 60, 70 yards. Piled right up. So that was like, again, I was at like max level of confidence. And then as bow hunting does to you, it humbles you and brings you back down pretty quick. At least for me.
Oh, it does, man. It does for everybody, I think.
Fortunately, well, for me anyways. So you hope that when you get humbled that it still like works out. I was pretty grateful for that Iowa deal. It's like I screwed that up. You know what I mean? It's like just as easily could have not gotten that deer, and it just happened to work out. But I was like, that'll make you check yourself. You're like, boy, how do I not let that happen again? You know what I mean? How do I keep my composure a little better the next time?
I think the 2 bucks I shot this year were the 2 best shots I've had on deer, and couldn't tell you how long.
Crushed them both. That's awesome.
Yeah, it felt amazing. Like when you put it right in the pump station, you're like, yes.
How'd you like that?
Dude, that's the best feeling in the world.
There isn't a better
when that
feeling,
happens. Man. Like, and it's just, especially like you either watch them fall or hear them fall, whatever. It's just like, and you make a really good shot. Like, it just, because bow hunting is such a mental thing. And when you're at least me, when I'm spiraling downhill, I just keep going downhill until somehow I can get myself reset and get that confidence back. And then it's like, once I'm going, I'm moving in the right direction, and I'm going it. Now this year had a little bit more, ups and downs. It's like, I guess I went 3 for 5 on, I had the 2 misses, and then the other 3 were like the buck I ended up killing in PA. Now that was a 10-yard shot on the ground, and he was quartering 2. I put it right on his shoulder, and I shot through, passed through, and he went 18 yards. He was a hard shot, and he piled up,
That's
so
what
it was
you
like,
want.
it was awesome to be able to have that. But
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Spartan Forge.
Dude, maps. Mapping, right? Yeah. It all starts with a map, a visualization of a new property, into the fine tuning of different food plots, different habitat projects, where those are going to go, all the way to sharing pins and looking kind of like beyond the layers with something like a LiDAR, which is exclusive to Spartan Forge as of now.
Yeah, and whether we're looking at it from a management side to put in food plots or switchgrass, or if we're taking a run and gun public approach on Kansas, it all starts with a map. It starts with a strategy there. You and I are going to have our own Blue Force team, which will allow us to run our own devices, but be able to see what you're adding or what I'm adding to that single map, which is really going to be critical moving forward this hunting season.
That's right. So if you're looking for a mapping software to try out this year, or maybe you're just like not getting what you need out of the one you're using currently, Bill's offered us a promo code of HUNTR20, HUNTR20, that you guys can use to get your own subscription up and rolling. Check out Spartan Forge, download the app, use that promo code, and we'll be using that this year.
Make sure you check out Spartan Forge. We talked about this on our little hunt companion we just did this morning. It was like last year, it was like 4 days left in the PA season. I went behind the house, shot a doe with my bow, made a great shot, basically wrapped the season on like, that was a great shot, easy find, like everything did what it was supposed to do. And like, to your point, Beau, I think a lot of those mental game things, it can start really with the end of this season. Like, even if you're struggling to like find a buck or punch tag, like, dude, go make a great shot on a doe and like at least, you know, be like, boy, it's been a while since I killed something, but that felt great and I made a great shot. And whether you have another chance at a buck this year and or that just takes momentum into next year to be like, hey, I ended with like a really good shot on a doe. Like that's to me something that I always try to keep in the back of my head.
Oh yeah, and actually Johnny and I were just talking about this. He was talking about, you know, getting involved with some of the red tag programs, like even in the summer.
Oh yeah,
to go shoot some does, so that, because it's like I don't have a lot of experience with shooting a ton of deer like a lot of people do, like every year, because it's like there's not. I don't shoot a lot of does. The deer density is getting better, but it's not like where I can go out and shoot 4 or 5 does a year. So it's like, you know, I may shoot one doe and a buck or two. And it's like, that's not a lot,
enough.
you know, of shooting when it comes to it. So then you get this, you know, you build up, you do all the scouting, you're doing all this stuff, you practicing a lot shooting, but then you go for this one moment and it might be the first time that year that you've drawn your bow back on a live animal. It's like having those reps in can, you know, with does, with whatever, can really make a big difference. A lot more than, you know, shooting a target.
It definitely can. That's a big part of it. I felt that when I was that's the only deer I shot this year. Was that deer in Iowa, and I'm gonna say it was the only deer I was at full draw on too.
I think so.
And it is a different thing for sure, being at full draw on a living animal, you know, that's moving and stuff, as opposed to, you know, I shot in the yard all summer. You know, got to put the tree stand in the tree and, you know, do some elevated stuff like that. But there is just something. It's
a different ballgame.
There's more of it's not like a responsibility, but it's just more of like there's more weight to the situation when you're like, okay, this is the real one.
Yeah, it's literally one arrow.
And you feel a little bit like not unprepared, but like it can be overwhelming. The moment can be overwhelming if you haven't done it already a few times leading. If the first, you know, first ones you're drawn on is 108, the biggest buck of your life or whatever, then it's like, whoa.
Yeah, talk about ice. Yeah, breaking the ice.
Yeah. So that's good advice. It's probably something I should do more too, shoot more does.
And even thinking like, you know, and I've even watched like some of like the best shooters. You look at like a Levi, or you look at someone that like seemingly always makes good shots. And I'm like, okay, you know what? You watch like videos of some of these people and it's like, they're very patient, you know, with, like you were talking about rushing the shot, like when you have an opportunity. And it's like, that's what I've learned in that video you referenced earlier, the Coal Country film, West Virginia. I talked through myself 3 different times on when I was wanting to shoot that deer, and I waited until it was like the perfect situation. At that point, I was like mentally there. I'm like,
it's really impressive.
You know,
it really is.
Rush it. And when you do it, and it's like, man, that felt like really good. Like he has no idea I'm here. Like it's perfect.
There's guys, the 3 that come to mind, and I'm sure there's a pile of others, but like I've seen Lukowski do it, I've seen Levi do it, and I've seen Josh Bomar do it. And those, maybe it was all 3 on like long shots where you watch it happen and you're just like, if you're real with yourself, you're like, could I do that? And I'm like, ooh. And I just have a lot of respect for like what you're saying is the patience and the like calmness of mind to be able to pull something like that off under what we all know is like potentially the most stressful or exciting situation you're going to be in, like in your life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think Lee's probably tapering off a little bit here, but Josh and Levi especially, those guys kill a shitload of animals every year.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Have you seen some of Lee's, like that Alberta hunt and stuff? Dude, it's impressive.
Yeah, very much.
Really impressive. It's like, it really takes, you know, Cam's probably another one, Cam Haynes. You know, they can make those kind of shots where it's like there's so much emphasis on the process and stuff. And that's an admirable something I'd like to be able to do.
And it's not even like the long shots. Even some of the like, my cousin is a good example, Mason. Like he's an absolute killer, and I've like heard him say before where he's drawn back and let down because he didn't feel right in certain situations, or he didn't just. And I was like, I don't know, you know, at this point if I have all that control that I need to have in that. But I've learned from listening to him with it. You know, he's done it on mule deer where it was inside 30 yards, but it was like he just didn't feel good about it and was able to let down and kind of reset himself and think about it and get it taken care of. And And yeah, it's just it's something to continue to strive for. And I don't know, if we'll ever completely accomplish that. I mean, that feeling and that rush, that flush of emotions is what we live for at the same time. But if I could, continue to work on controlling that a little bit better, that'd be great.
The draw and the letdown. I'm trying to think if I did that on that Iowa buck this year or not. I can't. Frankly, it was like a blackout. I can't remember.
So that's what we're trying to avoid here.
Yeah, but it's like I've done it maybe once before, but I think that's probably the hardest to come back from, is like when you're in full draw on an animal, whether it's, he takes a different trail or it's still too thick, or, even like, I'll be the first, like I can't hold it for more than like 2.5 minutes. Like I'm going to start shaking. I'm going to start losing my focus.
2 minutes is a long time.
To let down, regroup, draw again on them, and then kill them. I think that's extrememely hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just it's mental, but
especially if you were at draw for an extended period of time. That's really, like if you're at full draw for any 30 seconds or longer, a minute or longer, and then you decide to let down, and then it happens quickly. I'll
have to watch back through on that. I feel like I did draw at one point, and then he didn't commit. He turned, and I think I had to let down, and then I snort wheezed at him again, and then he came through, and then I shot him. But yeah, it's the extended periods that's
probably what you're most comfortable with. Because so I would say I'm really comfortable with drawing my bow and shooting quickly. I'm not somebody who's going to draw early and wait for the shot. So
interesting.
I think, and letting down my bow is pretty easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, but holding it is that's where my weakness would be. Like if I get caught, like if they're looking at you, or something like that, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
it's not good. Not good for me.
That's a rough one for sure. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think, Beau, like in the big woods settings, at least, it seems like most of the time it happens so fast that it doesn't, like, I don't have to hold. Like, it just, I hear it, I look, here it comes, he's coming through here, I draw, I'm settled, he comes through, I kill him. Like,
well, here, I'll say this too, just to emphasize that style, because I think it's one of two. Somebody's either they're comfortable. It's like I almost think of it like the elite mindset, like the elite, but because the let off is so great and stuff. They're like, here he comes. He'll be down here at the trail in 10 seconds. So they just draw and get ready.
Yeah,
I'm typically not drawing my bow until like I have a shot.
So you're like, I wouldn't wait that late. I'm drawing before he's in my shooting lane for sure.
Yeah, I am too. I'm
not holding him at the top
of
of the trail, though. Like, if he's coming down the trail, I'm not drawing and waiting for him at 50 yards or 60 yards to come in necessarily.
No, I'm more so like the last piece of cover that I can, like, say before he's going to hit some sort of opening, or like there's a lot of things that depends on, like, how quickly they're moving, like all that kind of stuff.
I really don't like drawing when they're in, like, I think they could just be like, look right, like in the open.
That's why, though, because I'm afraid they're going to look and see. Not that I'm afraid, but like if that happens, I want to have a shot. So because then I'm going to finish anchoring. It's not like they're going to immediately turn and bolt.
See, that's my panic.
Usually they don't.
Is like if they're in the open and I'm drawing, like I feel like I'm screwed to get back and like get on them.
See, because you did this, our styles are different in that way. That's why you didn't get that mule deer kill that I bet you in North Dakota, was South Dakota rather.
Oh yeah,
because you sprung up and jerked your bow back on him.
I did.
Whereas I never do that. I just draw smooth and like and purposeful and stuff. But because I know they're not gonna.
Yeah.
Well, it just hasn't happened to me yet.
Yeah.
Where it probably can happen, where they just immediately turn and bolt, but usually they stop and look, and you're like, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a situation this year in PA before that miss. It was I think it might have been the day before. I was set up about 70 yards below that, and I was in this spot, and I had a feeling that it was like that time, like October, 23rd-ish, somewhere around there, where it's like it's getting a little weird. Like they're going to be checking some.
It was good, man. I remember.
It was great, and but I was like, all right, I'm still kind of focused. There's some doe bedding nearby, but I also think that these bucks bed down in this one corner, actually on both sides of me, and I was in this like kind of funnel between this like 30-year-old clear cut and then like a newer clear cut with a bunch of beach brush in it, and I was in this little drain in between there, and there was a scrape like 35 yards to my left, but I couldn't see it because it was too thick. But there was a blowdown in front of me, and they had to go around it either my way or on the opposite side to go there. And I was hoping they were obviously going to come on my side. And I saw a buck, and I'm like, oh, he's a shooter. And he was heading down right at that scrape, but he was on the opposite side of it. So I called at him, and I could just see his body coming underneath the pine. So I drew back, and he does what a lot of big deer do when you call and there's like you're kind of sitting a little bit of an opening.
Yeah, they're
get right
looking
to the edge of that cover and stop and just peer out. And I'm at full draw, and he's literally like 18 yards. And I'm like, I just need, I could see his guts and his hind quarter, but I can't see the rest of it forward, like kind of in through like the little pines there. And I'm like, I'm not shooting that shot. I just need him to take one more step. And then he realized something wasn't right, and he kind of turned around and bugged off. And I'm like, dang. But that was like, those situations this year were just, it was like normally in the areas that I hunt, if I can get a couple opportunities a year, that's pretty dang good. And it was like this year in October, it was just like, seemed like one after another that were rolling through. And I was just, the other situation I had a camera guy with me. Actually, I'm actually going to release this footage because the buck ended up getting killed. But I had this other area I was going into, another giant deer, that a completely different area. It was my first day in there. I climbed up this ridge. I parked down in this bottom. It was about a 450-foot elevation climb. I got right to the edge of it, and there was like about 40 yards to the edge of this clear cut, but it was like a bench there just off the top. And I'm like, oh, it's perfect. There was a big community scrape out there that I had found in the spring. I didn't even have, I think I had one picture of him on that scrape that year, but I didn't run cameras there the year before. And I was like, at some point he's going to check this because there's does that bed in this clear cut. And we're there, and we're doing this film, this documentary film with my dad. So I was like, it was warming up, and I'm like, you know what? And Thomas, my camera guy's like, hey, we got to do some interviews at camp. Like, what day works the best? I said, well, how about this afternoon? We'll take off this afternoon and go. It's kind of warming up here a little bit. I think it was October 29th. But I was like, we can take this off. The rest of the week looks better weather-wise. And it was 11:15. And he's like, we can sit, a little bit longer, and we'll have time to shoot it this afternoon. I said, okay. I said, maybe we'll sit till 12:30 or so. And I looked at we're actually getting some rain coming in. I said, maybe like, I don't know, 11:30 or so, given our 15, 20 minutes. And as soon as I said that, it starts pouring rain. And we hadn't seen a deer all morning. And I just looked at him. I was like, what do you think? Let's pack it up. And he's like, all right. He packs up. He goes down first. I said, we'll leave our setups in the tree. We're going to come back here tomorrow morning. And he goes down. I let my bow down, and nice guy he is. He's like, you want me to untie this for you? He kind of whispers up. Yeah, move it out of the way so I don't step on my bow. He moves it out of the way. I take one step off the tree, and I hear crashing coming out of the clear cut. And here comes this buck, and he's actually a 13 point with just inline, just like phenomenal deer, comes out chasing this doe, and she runs by at about 28 yards, heads towards the scrape and goes off. He comes out, he doesn't know where she went, and he sees Thomas at the base of the tree down there with his camera, and Thomas like kind of curled up in a ball trying not to be seen. The buck kind of sees him and thinks this is my opinion, thinks he must have been the doe. He just starts grunting and running right at Tom.
Whoa.
Brr, brr, brr. Comes in, and he ends up stopping and like looking, not really seeing, and just given every angle that you could want, every quartering away, sideways, broadside, about 20 yards, and then just slowly kind of works his way off. And then he hits the doe trail again and works on it. But I couldn't rip up my bow because it was untied. It was moved off to the side. Like I was just like,
wow.
At that point, and that was like a few days after I just missed that other big one in a different area. And I was just like, wow. What is going on that I can't close the deal right now? I'm making these, these mistakes. And then I did end up killing a few days later, but it was just like, that was the best, October that I had ever had hunting in the big woods. And I think a lot of it had to do with weather. And also I think there was a better number of quality deer this year from the last 2 winters being mild, and also the last few rifle seasons not having snow. Now this year we had snow, cold weather, and rifle season, and I think just about every buck I knew about has been killed. So
really?
I
Did
think
he
it's going
get
to be a
killed
little bit tougher
in gun
next year.
season or bow?
Gun season.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think he was? How big you think, Beau?
That one was probably around the 160 mark.
Oof. It's a hammer.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered about the guns. Yeah. Like obviously I watched Johnny's hunt up there, the buck he killed, and obviously his camera got killed as well. And I wondered how that snow starting to, because I love still hunting in the snow. That's like one of my favorite things to do. If I get out of archery season to get into that, but I figured that it was gonna, wreak some havoc on the deer up there, especially the quality deer.
Yeah, I said it the day before gun season. I was like, if there was ever a year that I would have been okay, like having my tag coming into gun season, my buck tag, it would have been this year, because it was just like everything lined up to make it like you could still hunt, you could do whatever you wanted. Like it was just good weather, it's cold down in single digits sometimes. Like in some areas I was seeing that didn't have much pressure, bucks were going back to just like feed patterns.
Yeah.
And more so than you even see in the early season. They were just like smashing the black cherries that were left over, digging those up in the ground. Like it was just,
I think it got cold so quick, dude. We had such a mild, like dry October, even into early part of November. And then whatever it was, right before Thanksgiving, we had that big cold snap and we got a decent amount of snow. And then it kind of just like, we had a couple warm, days, but all in all, like this December has been way colder than any December we've had in the past, consistently at least.
Yeah. I would totally agree with that. But it's definitely, there's still going to be, I'm sure there's plenty of deer out there. You just got to find them that haven't been killed. But like, I feel like anytime I'd open my phone, someone would be like, isn't this buck the one you were after? I'm like, oh,
what about the big one? What about the big one you missed?
I don't know about him yet. I haven't seen him on camera, but I haven't seen pictures of him, so that's positive.
It's a positive sign.
Yeah, and that one was bigger than the other one I just told you about, and it was just like, I hope, praying that, and I have his shed from last year, so I kind of have an idea where he had wintered at last year to go in and maybe find his sheds again. The area does get hit hard by shed hunters, so who knows if someone picks him up first. But I'd like to hopefully know that he made it through, and that would give me some hope. But there was one area though, that the one with, like I said, the big one that I had my bow on the ground. There's really only 2 bucks in there that I was like really excited about, and it's a decently large area, but both of them got shot, and I'm just like, I was looking, I'm like, I don't even know of any like up and comers. Like there's some that like it's gonna take a few years before, and I felt like really good about learning the area, and like, and that's just the name of the game with it, and it's just like is what it is. So I can't complain.
It's pretty wild though when you think about it. Like, take that area for example. Like you've got 2 really good bucks in that area. They both get killed, and obviously, like, I'm sure, because we're talking Pennsylvania here, right? Like, I'm sure both of those bucks were probably on a lot of hunters' target list last year, right? So it's like they make it through several of these seasons, and then you get a season that kind of the conditions are more favorable for, and they get killed. And like you said, the hard part is you want to believe if those guys were there that something else dominant is going to move in, right? Because the situation, the environment, that everything stacks up, and these deer cover a lot of ground, especially in the mountains. But yeah, it also is like a bit discouraging when you're like, man, like I don't even have a 3-year-old that's going to be 4 next year that would be a shooter in there.
Yeah, it's and there is one that's, he's actually, there's probably another one there that's 4, but he's just kind of a messed up rack and ugly looking deer. Like he's still a great buck, but he's just like got real short tines and just kind of weird looking. But what's crazy is that one that had the bow on the ground, I believe that deer was only 4 years old and he was that big.
Wow.
I had photos of him last year as a 3-year-old, and I remember seeing all this the splits, and I was like, that deer has some serious potential. I didn't think he was going to make a 30-inch jump in a year, but he did. And I don't see that typically, but this year I've seen deer make bigger jumps than ever before. And I truly believe has a lot to do with the winters being mild, and their bodies were just built up, and all the nutrients could go to in that growing season. And we didn't have a bad summer, as far, if I can remember right, as far as like we had some rain and stuff. I know the fall was kind of dry, but at least in my area it was. We had
I think
some,
you got more
precipitation.
Rain. What did your so you killed a buck? Did your dad kill a buck?
Yeah, my dad killed a buck in gun season.
What's the what the fat reserves look like on those deer?
Trying to remember. I don't know if I even seen my dad's skin. I'd have to ask him about it. But the deer that my uncle had shot, which was like a 9 or 10-year-old deer. I mean, just an absolute. That one had quite a bit of fat on them. But a few of the other deer that I've been seeing on my trail cameras, at least, have had no. They were run down. Like didn't have much. They were like, there was one buck I just showed up on my camera the second to last day of gun season on my cell camera in daylight, chasing a doe around, and he looked like a completely different deer than he did during the rut for how just drained he looked. Like his neck was skinny. I mean, he's a good 4, maybe even a 5-year-old deer that was just looked like a 3-year-old. Like when I was just initially looking at his body. But now going back to the fat reserves, the doe I just shot last week, she had a lot of fat on her.
Yep.
And same with the doe my dad had shot. I guess a few days before that.
I would have expected, the red oak acorn crop was such a bumper, at least down here. I don't know about where you guys were at up there, but like that usually should, put these deer in better condition. But, I think that late November snowfall and then colder than normal December for a lot of it, I think I think it really takes a toll on those deer. And now, here we are talking about it, it's December 17th. Like these deer got 2.5 months of rough stuff to still go through.
Yeah. But so most of the areas I hunt don't have oaks. So like, it's a little bit different as far as like with the red oaks, what you were saying with having those fat reserves. Now there was a really good red oak crop, but there was so much of it in a lot of areas that I kind of stayed away from it because it wasn't really giving me a lot to target on. It was like I might as well hunt areas that don't have any of that and just focus on the browse, because I can look at historical patterns with it and it's more consistent than looking at things with acorn crops. So that's kind of why I've a lot of times stayed away from that. Other than early or late, then I'll kind of move to those areas. I'm always kind of monitoring places that have acorns, but I didn't spend a lot of time hunting those particular locations this year.
Did you have beech nuts where you were at?
Not much. No. Black cherry was super heavy, which they tend to only feed on them until through the first week of October, and either they're all gone, or this year there was such a good crop that they almost dry up like little raisins, and then they don't touch them again till snowfall. And this year we didn't have any snow until the end of November, and then it seemed like in gun season they were digging them up like crazy going through. Where typically, you kind of get that. Like I'll target black cherry areas again in like that mid to late October when we kind of get a good, might get a snowfall that hits, and they might dig them up there for a day or so.
Right.
I don't know the reason for that at all. I can't explain it, but that was just always something that I remember my dad telling me as a kid, and just have always kind of paid attention to that. But
yeah. I mean, it's hard in those places. I mean, especially, you're right on the historical side to be able to continue to monitor that browse. It's, that is the predictable piece from year to year, minus drought years or changes in clear cuts or something like that. But, it becomes really hard when you play the mass game, because it's just like it's so variable from year to year, and it's not like you don't really know it until you're in it type of thing.
Yeah, no, there's a good buddy of mine that hunts, that spends a lot of time in the woods, scouts. He's there in the woods almost every day, and he's big on, he only hunts areas with acorns, and he was saying that in most of the areas he was in, it was almost the same patterns last year as far as the same amount of trees that we're producing. So he's like, I could go off of those patterns from last year. Now I haven't talked to him to see if that was consistent with the deer yet to see after the season here, but it mass is so difficult when you get a lot of it or nothing, because then it's just like it changes things so much versus areas that have good browse involved in it too. It's like even if there's an area that has oak trees, but there's also a lot of good browse, whether that be in the form of cuts or briars or whatever it might be, then at least they have those other food sources. They don't need to migrate and move 3-4 miles away to go find it. Like, I know there's places in Ohio that I hunt. I go down for this muzzleloader season coming up here in January. And it's like, if there's no acorns in those hills, they'll move 4 or 5 miles till they hit ag.
Yeah.
And then it's like a ghost town. I mean, Johnny had told me that because he'd been hunting for longer than I did. And he's like, he'd be like, it's not worth even coming down this year for late season because there's not going to be any deer in the woods. And it's pretty interesting to see that.
Yeah, it's wild, man. Yeah, it's a tough thing, I think, for people to comprehend, because you really have to pay attention to the trend things, and it's like we were talking about earlier. It's anything. Like, it just takes years to build these trends and observe these different things happening in an area and understanding what those deer are going to do. From a year to year standpoint, especially if you're trying to kill a 4 or 5 or 6 year old type buck. It takes time.
It's so fun. Like, I mean, that's because I love checking out new areas and going to it. But it's like, when I find new areas, that's when I'm running cameras in those places, not hunting as much, or I'll hunt them on if I have the ability to hunt and it's not good weather conditions for my prime spots. Maybe I'll throw a sit or two at it and check it out. But it's all learning for the future, because it takes me a while to figure out an area to like really feel like I have a beat on it. And that's kind of the fun of it though too.
Agree, man.
That's probably the strategy too for like overcome. Like you said, those deer got killed. Some of those deer got killed this year, and so it's like you can figure out an area, and then if the deer you want to, are hunting in there get killed out of it, then you're like, okay, well, it doesn't really do any good to know that area if there's no deer in it to hunt. So it's like it pays off, and a lot of times to just have, I guess, irons in the fire, or to know enough areas that you can bounce around and work.
Yeah.
It's hard when you find, it seems like you're always a year behind, or at least I've felt this way, where it's like, if that's the case, whether they got killed or they just never show up, there's not a buck on the home farm, let's say, that you want to hunt. You're like, okay, well, I'm going to branch out and find one. And then you find one in an area that you haven't hunted yet. And you're like, whew, okay, well, you don't have that historical data. You don't have that advantage on them. So it's like, it's kind of starting all over again.
Well, yeah, there's that, but I also do believe that places that mature bucks like to live, other mature bucks will move in. I think, Jeremy, you kind of said that earlier, but like the one area with the big one that I'd missed, I had pictures of him last year, but he was not doing what he was doing this year. There was another big deer in there last year that disappeared. He must have got killed, died in the winter. I don't know. I never saw him again. Anything, but that he is now the 4th deer in the last, I've been hunting this area for going on 11 years, and he is the 4th big buck to do similar things. Once he becomes the biggest deer in that area, it's like all of a sudden this one scrape decides to be his scrape that he goes to in mid-October and check out, where last year that deer never touched that scrape, but the other big deer that was older at that time used to own that. And this deer literally was almost on the same pattern of doing that. And I believe, I don't have confirmation exactly where he was bedded at a lot of times, but I believe that he was using the same bedding area that, deer previous to that even did. So I think there is still value in it, but it might take a few years before you can, kind of implement it again or look at it. But
I think that's a good point. And I mean, you see that in farm country, like you see that in the Midwest. Like if you kill a big buck out of an area, and you're in an area where there's other big bucks around, like one will move in, they'll absorb that habitat, that space. I mean, it was prime for a reason. and there are factors like obviously mast or crop rotation in the Midwest, like all these things can kind of come into play on it. But yeah, it's definitely, it's just continuing to put those irons in the fire and just know like, okay, eventually if a big buck shows up in there, kind of know what he's probably going to do.
Yeah. And they're all individuals. So like, it's not like it's an exact, copy paste sort of deal, but there's some trends, like you said, that get you in the right ball game or the right frame of mind as far as moving and figuring that out. But I think there's so much value, and I would imagine it's the same, like whether you're in farm country or the big woods, of like just hunting an area or hunting a farm multiple years and just seeing how deer go. And it's like, I've learned so much even from gun season. Like I used to look down on it so much. It's like, oh, if I have a gun tag, in my pocket, I'm a loser, basically is how I always thought. But now it's like, I don't know. I just always thought that way. But now I've learned so much from gun season to how the deer are moving, or even if like, say you're even doing drives or you're still hunting or whatever you're doing, like watching how they move and how they escape and how they're like, especially if you get snow, like this year, learned a ton about that just from watching how they were moving. I found we were putting on a drive with my family. There was like 4 of us driving, and there was a couple people sitting that had buck tags in their pockets. And actually Johnny was with me. He was helping out, and I was going through this area. And the year prior in gun season, Johnny's like, hey, those red pines that are in there, he's like, I found a lot of good deer sign around. It seemed like a buck was living in there. So I went in, and we had snow this year. And I was going through those pines, and I found this big bed and this track. And it just so happened, I couldn't follow the track because the way that we were doing the drive, it was like, okay, I'm going this way. So I was kind of backtracking them. And I found this rub like the size of my thigh that was hit, and shavings were on top of the snow, and his tracks were up. Like he hit it that morning.
Wow.
Or that night before. Like he had just hit it. And I got to see kind of how that deer moved through that terrain, where he bedded at. And then for whatever reason, whether it was us setting up, I think he had left earlier, but he staged there for a while, bedded down, and then moved. But it was just like that, all that information. It's like, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have a camera in there next year to learn, and maybe in bow season be able to capitalize on it. But it's super interesting I don't know, I love deer hunting at any time of the year, no matter what weapon is kind of in my hand. I think there's something to learn from it, especially if you kind of change your frame of mind with it.
Yeah.
All that information is like so critical. And it's almost like, other than trail cameras, which have, lifted the veil, I guess, in a lot of ways, it's like you don't obtain that information unless you go get it. Like if you got to be out there and see it happen. And it's just like, if you backtrack any successful hunt that you have, in terms of like, if you kill one, and then you think back, you're like, well, I guess I saw him do that thing that one time. And then, I've seen him do a few, and I observed, whatever it was, all these context clues about how, even deer in years past have used a certain area type of a thing. It's like collectively, it's all that information you've gathered either, on that specific deer up until that point in the season, but, over your career of hunting, you're like, it doesn't just happen. You have to be in the woods to get it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I look at, Beau, obviously, like your family and your dad, like, 25 years ago, your dad wasn't running cell cams. Like he was boots on the ground, learning those hills and hollers, and understanding where those deer were moving and, where they were. And, but fast forward to now, I'm sure a lot of that intel that he picked up, 20 years ago, even on foot, and, cuts change and things change. Now he's like, yeah, that's a good spot. We should go look in there for sign. Maybe we put a camera up. Like it continues to build like a giant snowball, basically.
Yeah. Like it's so funny. Like my dad, cause he's been hunting for, 45 plus years now. And well, I guess he's probably a little more than that. And I'm like, oh, I'm looking at checking this area out. And he's like, oh, I've been hunting in there. I'm like, when? Like, and he's like, oh, well, I guess it was like 20 years ago.
Yeah, 1985.
Like, you could look at this or that, and this is what kind of what they used to do. and then I'll go in and I'll find similar stuff, and it's like, what?
Wow.
Like, it's crazy to see, like, somehow, and there's obviously, like, things look so different, but also there's still some similar trends that kind of come with it. And I think there's so much, value, like, Jared, what you were saying about just boots on the ground. Like, cameras are so awesome. I love cameras. I love looking at pictures. I think they're such a helpful tool, but there's nothing that replaces boots on the ground and walking it and seeing it. And I was talking to a guy the other day, and he's just like, how do you know? Like, he was telling me all this information he had on this deer, and he's like, well, how do you know? I'm like, I don't really know, like, a lot of things. I just build this situation in my mind that gives me the confidence, and even though it might be wrong, but you build enough things that you learn from walking in the woods, from cameras, from all this stuff that give you this, you build this idea in your head, and sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong with it, but that's how you build that confidence to be able to go in, and you only get that confidence from having experiences where it does work out in your favor, or you see things going that way that lead you to believe that.
Yeah. And you only have to be right within 40 yards.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in my case, 42. That's no.
42 is a no-go. 42 is a no-go. HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Pure Wildlife Blends.
Yeah, buddy. We're doing a lot of food plots this year. It seems like the planning, the preparation, like the coordinating for getting everything, in the ground, is like it just never ends.
Yeah, and I just got off an 18-hour bender where I'm on multiple farms getting everything ready. But this year, fortunately, we've got Pure Wildlife Blends, which is Jeff Sturgis. Who better to partner with for our food plot program than a guy who's got 30 years of experience, been on thousands of farms. I mean, the guy lives and breathes food plots.
Yeah, and so the blends themselves are all handpicked by Jeff, and it's like, man, we've had a lot of conversations with him over the years, and he's been pretty influential in how we set up farms and stuff. And frankly, the product, it's in a name. It's Pure Wildlife Blend. So a lot of these other seeds that you see that are blue and orange or all these things, it's because they're coated with lime and they're dyed, and it's marketing at the end of the day. So we have a lot of confidence in the seeds that Jeff has chose, and that's what we're going to be planting this year. And so right now, you can use code HUNTR10 for 10% off anything on the website.
So if you're looking for switch, clover, brassica, or Jeff's favorite, layer in the rye.
Layer in the rye.
Yep. Check out purewildlifeblends.com. Well, Beau, just as and you don't have to tell us the exact number, but like, when you're looking in these areas or even going into a season, and not necessarily like individual like spots within an area, but are you focusing on like 10 areas? Or are you focusing on like 30 areas? Like how does that, maybe break that down for some of our listeners in a process standpoint as you're going into the season to say, because obviously it's great, and cameras help, but like if you're like, man, I'm covering 30 areas, like you're one guy, and you're still traveling to hunt other places, like, what's your strategy as you kind of enter into a year?
So there's a lot of years where this number will increase, but I also have more time than the average guy as far as covering ground. But I want to say, like, even before I started doing this full time, my rule of thumb was always 2 to 3 core areas and 2 to 3 like trial spots or new places. So like basically I have 2 to 3 areas that are like my main focal points, whether that's bucks that I want to be chasing or knowledge on it that are like, okay, these are my main spots. And then I have 2 or 3 that I might run a few cameras in and are testing out, and maybe we'll hunt on the off days or whatever else it might be. But I'd say having 5 areas would be really good to be able to bounce, because there's so many times that option one, either the buck you're hunting gets killed, or there's too much pressure that you didn't foresee coming. Maybe it wasn't in the past years, or they're logging it, or they're doing something that can change it. You put all your eggs in that basket, but then there's also the side of it where you have too many areas that you never focus. And I struggle with that, like, because I have so many places that I scout and that I think are good, that it's easy to get in your mind when things aren't working out and option A, that you just jump to option D because you're almost like bored with it, or you lose confidence. And I've gotten better with like really focusing in on, it's like, okay, here are my top bucks or areas that have the most number of quality deer. Because for the most part, I'm not someone that's all in on one specific deer. I kind of look at an age class and then also like the knowledge I have with an area when I'm going into that. But I'm going to focus in on, this 2 to 3 spots, with number 1 being the place that I'm, mostly focused on. But say I feel like I'm putting too much pressure on it, or I'm just feel like I'm not in the game, then I might jump to option 2 at that point. But I do think it's important to have, a little bag of spots, but not too many that you're just flying around and not really getting anywhere, because especially in the big woods, it takes time, and you can have the right area, the right spot. And if you're not putting enough ass time in there, like, it's just not, sometimes it doesn't work out.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I know obviously with the advent of cell cameras, especially, like, there's a lot of guys that'll cover, me included. Like I'll have, 15, 20 cameras on the mountain in 12 different spots. But I would say that half of those spots, I just have cameras there just so that I have monitoring and data coming in even for future years. It's the 6 spots or, 5 spots that really I'm starting to hone in, and probably half of those are the ones that I'm spending most of my time. So yeah, I think it's people develop maybe a false confidence in, I've got to, I went in an area, I scouted it, there's a scrape, I put a camera, and now I'm monitoring that area, right? It's a valid option, and it is to a point, but you're probably not covering it effectively, especially in the big woods. And then number 2 is like, you're not probably hunting it either, right? You're just, there's a camera on a scrape in 1,000 acres. It can only do so much for you.
Well, and so I run a lot of cameras. Like I put a lot of cameras out in the woods, and the buck I killed this year, I never had a picture of.
Crazy.
So like take that for, an example of, you're still missing stuff, even though I feel like I have areas covered.
You sure do,
good.
Man. You do feel like it when you're in an area and you've got cameras covered and knowledge. You're like, yeah, man, if they're in here, I got them. And it's just, I don't know how they do it, but they skirt them.
Well, I saw a guy shoot one in archery season, and that was a really big deer. And I talked to the guy, and whether he was full of shit or not, I don't know, as far as where, the area that he killed it in. But it was the area I was hunting, and I'd never seen this deer before. And I was like, whether I was just on, say my cameras and my scouting was just on the outside range of it, and maybe it overlapped a little bit. Maybe. I don't know, but it kind of gives me hope in a way too, of still having that unknown of like anything can show up or anything can kind of happen with it. And I think that's a cool part of it. Now, my buck, when I did, after I shot him, I did have a guy that did send me photos of him that was hunting pretty close to me and had a decent amount of pictures of him, and I just never did. So like, it's just funny how that works. And like, I remember an example a few years ago. I was hunting one deer, and I littered this area with cameras. Like, I had all the way down one side of the mountain and up the other side, and because he was using this valley, and I'd only get him on one of those cameras that was going across. And I might get him on one of the other ones here or there, but one of them was more consistent than the others by far, and over a couple year span. And it was just like, some of those spots were only 40, 50 yards apart. Like, and I wouldn't get them on this camera, but I'd get them on that one. It's like, there's so much you can be missing with it. Sometimes you kind of got to use your intuition a little bit. And when you're finding good sign of like, there might be something in here that I'm not necessarily picking up.
I bet a lot, and I mean, me included, there's a lot of people that just, cameras has given us that crutch to where, we feel like we're covering it. So if we don't see him, it's like, he's probably not there. And so, there's not many times, I guess, I walk into the woods where I'm like, maybe there's something that I don't know that's here.
I know. I wish I had the same hope that you do. I think it's because it's a big woods phenomenon, and it's also probably a non-bait state phenomenon, I think, because in those states it's like farm country where you can bait. Like, I've never seen anything turn up that I didn't know about.
It is fascinating. I am surprised that you haven't.
I'm not.
Really?
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm just running enough cameras, and it's like they're gonna come to a corn pile eventually. So,
well, and I guess do you also think it's like
It may only be one time. I'm not saying like they're going to be on a pattern in daylight or anything.
Well, because like your neighbors have had some big bucks in the past, and it's like they don't come on your property. Are they just married to like the neighbor's corn pile, basically?
Can you think of any specifically?
That one really giant wide one that Beanol shot.
The one time he came on our property, we got a picture of him.
You did,
but no, he just lived over a mile away.
Yeah, it's interesting that they don't. Yeah, you know, maybe
I would say to answer your question, yes, he was pretty married to those guys, just bait consistently, and the deer didn't really leave.
Yeah, well, like, you know, even Beau was talking about Southern Ohio, which, you know, obviously there's plenty of private areas that are baiting down there. Like, yeah, it's kind of weird. You know, Levi and we were talking about this morning is like the deer just in these big wood settings, these deer just feel like they have to walk.
Built to roam.
Yeah, like even if they've got ample food and does around, like they're just meant to cruise. Like they're meant to cover ground. And I don't know. That's just how they're built.
Yeah. And that's okay. I'm not wishing like, you know, where I hunt was different than it is. It's like, it's cool to know what they all are. But you know,
it's very isolated in kind of the
nice.
pockets.
It's nice to have situations too where, you know, anything could show up. I mean, I feel like on our Illinois farm, you know, there's enough habitat there.
Like it's a river corridor and
river
stuff.
corridor type stuff. Certain properties just set up differently that you're like, hey, it could happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the big woods thing is like because I mean, the name says it, because it's big woods, and even though there are, you know, pinches and funnels and stuff, like the deer can just walk 100 yards over this way or 200 yards over this way. Like in farm country, when it's blocks and limited cover, like they're in the cover. Like if you have a camera in the cover on like this pinch, like you're gonna get them. They're in there.
It's a different world, man. It's cool to talk about, but it's almost hard to remove your like. Our context is so different. Like if mainly what I hunt is farm country, I'm like, when you say anything, I'm like, okay, you know, that's where your mind is at. But I have also hunted the big woods, not a lot, but I have experienced it, and to be like understand the vastness of it and stuff, that I'm like, okay, yeah, it really is a different thing when you try to put yourself in that mindset.
It is, and like, you know, the term the big woods, but it's also it's so much smaller than you think at the same time too. Like once you dive into an area and you get to learn it, like that one area that I was hunting and spending most of my time in archery season, there's all this land, and I was hunting within 100-yard circle. I was bouncing around different trees, but I was within 100-yard circle for most of the time. And like, as I was hunting, and it's funny, like I'd access like this wind, it'd be a north wind. I'd have to park over here, go down across this bottom, come up, and I'd hunt on this side of it. And then if I was hunting a southwest wind, I'd be coming in from this side, and it'd almost be like I'm hunting a completely different area. Yeah. But I was only a stone's throw away of where I was before. But it's kind of crazy to think about.
But those are the micro spots that in those settings you want, right? There's a lot of, you know, unfavorable deer area, right? They move through there, they show themselves in there, but like they spend the core amount of their time here. Like this is the place, you know, at least in daylight hours, right? Which is all we care about.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And it's so fun. And that's what I love about deer hunting is like, there's so many different areas and places, like first, you know, whether it's farm country or swamps or big woods or open country. And it's so fun to try to figure them out and hunt them in different areas. Like even like the mountains, like in West Virginia, is different than hunting here. You know, I'm learning that and getting to spend time in doing it and understanding how they're using the benches and how they're using the bridges. And it's just like every area has their own micro things, but at the same time, like deer, and they have trends and things that they like to do across the board. Like a good example was Lee Ellis had come and hunted with me for a few days this year, and he's planning on spending more time just trying to learn it, to try something different. And like just watching him throw his tactics from the suburbs into the big woods, like he was like very well thought out, like put himself in good situations and good hunting. And it's like mature deer. And he was recognizing it even in a completely different setting.
Yeah, that's cool. He came close on one, didn't he?
Yeah, the first day. And I told him, I said, listen, buddy, I said, I love you and we're good friends, but if you would have killed a big deer on the first day here, I would be pretty upset. Like, I want you to be successful, but that's going to make
Not
me
that
look
bad.
really bad.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, man, they
Yeah.
big deer, do big deer things. And, if you can recognize that, you can put the patterns together pretty quickly. And, that's pretty much what it comes down to. So
What's next year looking like for you, Beau? You got any plans coming together yet? You gonna treat yourself to a Midwestern deer hunt one of these days?
I should be. I mean, I thought I was drawing Iowa this year and I didn't. So I should have, a lot of points going in. I should be a shoe-in. So that should be my.
we've heard that state's decent.
How many points did you have and where did you try to draw?
I had 5 points and I tried drawing the unit that supposedly would take 5 points, but this year was taking some 6s.
Wow,
Yeah.
You got declined with 5.
Yeah.
And we had how many points? 5?
5.
Yeah. Yeah, we heard that as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but now I feel like I should
You
definitely
should be a shoe-in next year. Yes.
You should be.
So, yeah. After seeing you guys, I mean, it sounds like the big bucks.
It's
around
pretty
here.
easy. It's pretty easy. You'll be fine.
Yeah, there's some decent deer out there.
What if?
I was just kidding. I'm really looking forward to that though, a different experience and like just trying to, I don't really know what to expect,
Dude,
but just
you'll be so and this, people, the Midwest guys sometimes take it rough, but like, dude, you'll be so lethal out there. Like the way that you're having to hunt back home like consistently to figure these deer out, you apply an ounce of that when you get out there and you're going to be just so freaking lethal. It's ridiculous. You're just, it'll kind of be like the Lee Ellis reverse situation for you though. Like it was, you'll go out there and you'll have thought it through and you'll have looked at your maps and you'll get into an area and you'll find fresh sign and you'll be like, okay, I'm going to sit here. And then boom, like there they are. And you're like, what?
We think, Beau. We think. I mean, that's our takeaway after a day. So I mean, it's funny.
Sure.
It's funny because like, yes, we applied some skill and stuff, but it's like also there's obviously some luck involved, and obviously we were on great properties, and so the same can definitely happen for you, but it's not a gimme.
I think you'll be in pretty good shape.
But you got a place to go. You got a place to go.
Yeah. No, I know I don't have a place to go yet.
Okay.
I honestly haven't even started like
You should start now.
any of the
well,
process.
if you know your unit, then
Yeah.
that's where to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll help.
No, I mean I have some ideas. I've been looking at some public. I mean, I'm open to whatever. Like don't
go to public. Dude, if you're gonna wait 6 years, 7 years to go hunt somewhere, get on a piece of private.
You saw what Utah was like.
Yeah, I know, right?
Montana.
It's like I said,
Montana.
I'm not against it at all.
Yeah.
I totally do that. That's just always kind of been what I had thought was what was gonna transpire with it, I guess.
We did too.
We did see a lot of the same though. There was some public stuff that we were looking at, stuff that guys had, other access to, and some permission stuff too. And like, even after it took us 5-6 years to draw, those places got pounded. And so like a lot of like the days leading up to our trip was like last minute dialing and like where we were going to go.
The other thing I'll recommend, and I saw it this morning, I meant to bring it up when Levi was on, but the Iowa DNR just released their EHD report, highest numbers yet.
Really?
From 2024.
Wow.
Yeah. So I say that because when you pick your zone, look at the counties, because there's a few counties that got smoked. Apparently, your county got smoked. Ringgold
did it.
Yeah. Surprisingly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to look at that. That's good information.
Talk to the locals.
We say that too because, like, I mean, obviously, we had not just like because we killed them. Like, we saw a lot of big deer out there, and
I saw
guys,
2 deer.
Yeah. Guys had them on camera.
I shot one of them.
Yeah. So, I mean, but that's probably a good resource to start because, if one of the counties you're thinking of got smoked this year, that may have a damper on what you're hunting next year.
Yeah, no, I'm just not. I'm not used to the whole EHD thing. Like most years I hunt, just never had to worry about that. And then seeing people go through it, it's like, man, that's a big deal, especially when you're like burning a bunch of points like that.
Yeah,
like you gotta be cautious of it. It's not like you're just going out for a year and you can go back next year.
No.
Yeah.
Well, you got to have. It could happen next year again too. Like there's. you know, it's a factor every year now, you know, so like the way you prepare is like we were saying is get as many spots as you can that are options, you know. I think like kind of what we did was we're like, hey, we appreciate the whatever it was, permission, leases, you know, we had like a multitude of things that we're like, okay, we have all these options. And then as the date was getting closer and stuff, we're like, okay, you know, what's showing up? First of all, you know, what deer do we have to hunt here? And then where is this EHD happening? Where's pressure happening? And then like when the day came, it was like we picked the property and the tree and went and did the thing and it worked out. But
Yep.
yeah, you'll be in good shape. Do you know like October, November? Do you have a rough plan for that yet, or?
I was thinking probably either late October or like second, third week in November is kind of what I had in mind. I really don't know yet. I went back and forth on it, and Johnny's has told me, he's like, you should go out right before Thanksgiving. He's like, most people clear out of the woods by that point, and
They
it's
do.
you know, still really good hunting at that. And then I've also come to really like late October. I'd really like to stay away from the first week of you know, November, that time frame, but we'll see. I guess it depends on where I'm going to. If I do get access to private, then maybe that's a little different than if I was hunting
For
public.
sure. Yeah.
Do you
from
have
a
any
pressure standpoint.
input?
I do. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm sure we could come up with something, but I start with your Utah connection probably has some things worked out for you as well. I would work that lead.
Yeah.
I wasn't asking for land. I was just meaning like date wise.
Well,
no. We'll help any way we can. We won't be back for 6-7 years. So.
Depending on how you do in PA early, I would keep that late October time frame for Pennsylvania, and I'd play later in Iowa. That would just be
I'd
my
forget
take.
Pennsylvania exists next year until you kill an Iowa.
I don't know. I mean, if the dude's chasing 160 pluses, like, you're gonna leave that to go.
Hey, that is not the normal.
That's what Beau does every year. Beau's out there chasing giants, you know.
That is not the normal. I got lucky, but
Yeah.
Well, real quick for time's sake. So Iowa. What else do you have on the radar?
Man, honestly haven't thought hard enough about it yet. I mean, we put in together for North Dakota last year.
Did you get a point last year?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Are you interested in looking at that again? I'm
definitely interested in that. And then I got to see what my Western stuff looks. I keep telling myself I'm going to switch to becoming a big mule deer hunter and trying to really put some emphasis on that, but I keep getting distracted by elk. So, but I think next year, I don't know if I can pull any elk tags or not. I actually think I could pull Wyoming. But I don't know if I'm gonna throw in on that yet. But I may try to do some mule deer stuff next year. As far as out west, whitetail, honestly, I'm been loving Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Iowa. That I don't like to just like try to fill my calendar with as much stuff as possible. I like really, putting myself in these places and trying to learn it and spend some time and hunting it. I did get I was talking about in West Virginia this year, I spent 99% of my time hunting public, but I did pick up another lease there this year. But I didn't get it till the summer, so I didn't know it. And it's all timber. So it was, I know it's going to take me a little bit. So I put some cameras out this year, did hunt it one day, and my buddy ended up killing a 150-inch deer.
That's a good sign.
So that was the biggest deer I had on camera. And I didn't have a whole lot of there was a lot of good up and comers, but it wasn't anything crazy. But I want to spend a lot of time in the spring there scouting it and actually trying to summer scout the hills like that when it's thick.
Yeah,
I just felt like I didn't have a good, just snakes and bugs and thickness, and just really didn't get a good idea what was going on. So I think I'm going to spend some more time there again. Between there and between that lease is a lot smaller than the other one I had, but it's all timber. So it's stand hunting. So kind of more typical what I do. I did hunt a little bit in New York this year. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. I spent probably 3 days in New York and kind of went down a rabbit hole of like wanting to learn that a little bit more and spend some time there. So that's nice because it's closer drive than driving to some of the other places.
Yeah.
But and those, I think that's kind of like, I like to look at my season in like stages, and honestly, I'd really like to look at that as like New York has some pretty good like gun seasons as far as like, before Thanksgiving, they have a gun season that opens up. It's like, oh, that'd be a cool time to go do that. They have some December, gun and muzzleloader season. So maybe I look at that of just that time frame and bow hunt some of the other places. But yeah, I honestly, man, I'm still up in the air. Other than Iowa looking like it's going to be a shoe-in of what I'm gonna do. But in January here, in a couple weeks, or after when this episode comes out in a week, I'll be going to Ohio to hunt with a muzzleloader. And last year I had a big deer at 30 yards and my gun just didn't go off. So
I remember.
Yeah, I think I came in here. I think I might have talked about it on your podcast.
Yeah.
Then, so I'm going to go back down there and give that a shot for that 3-day muzzleloader season, or I think it's 3 or 4 days, something like that.
Awesome.
Cool,
who you going with? Johnny?
Probably. Johnny's up in it. He might
freaking down there right now. He's going to tag out right now.
He's all over the place. I literally just told Johnny, I was like, hey, I said I'm gonna take some time off, spend some time with the family and girlfriend, and like just take time off from deer hunting up and until after Christmas. At the end of the conversation, he's like, so like the 18th of December, you want to go down to Ohio with me and hunt with a gun? I was like, Johnny, did you not listen to anything I said? I said I'm trying to step back. He's got no off switch.
I got him to work for 45 minutes today. That was the and then he's like, all right, I'm going to Ohio.
He's like, it's too wet.
Yeah.
Too wet.
Yeah. He's like, we'll just come back next week. I was like, it's Christmas next week.
Yeah.
Have you met Johnny's camera guy Pete yet?
No.
Oh my gosh, he's a freaking riot, and he's perfect for Johnny. He's probably the only guy that can follow Johnny around in the woods for an entire season and deal with him. But he gives Johnny shit just as hard as anybody, man. And it's hilarious to watch them too. They're like a married couple when they're and he's like a foot taller than Johnny, so it's even funnier like watching those two like interact with each other.
That's awesome.
No, I think it'll probably be with Johnny. Getting to have that experience. I know I'll be staying at his place, so
there you go.
He's got a cabin that he bought years ago, so that I usually go and stay there.
Right on.
Cool, dude. Well, we appreciate it, brother, and we hope that well, I guess if people are listening to this, it's the 26th, but as of today, we hope you guys have a good Christmas next week, and yeah, as always, man, we appreciate you coming on and
thanks for making time for us last minute. I think I texted you yesterday. It's like, you good?
About time.
You're like, I'm good.
Hasn't texted you since July.
Listen, it's not. When you guys ask, like, believe me, like I always want to do it, but you gotta expect that it's gonna be half your day that's spent doing it. At least this time, we didn't go through.
No, we were pretty good.
Bourbon.
Yeah, we were pretty efficient.
I was actually surprised not to see it on the table.
No, it's all over here. There's a card.
What's that? The bourbon or
this way?
Yeah, the bourbon.
Oh, we got a card over here now.
Yeah, there's quite a few bottles over there. Yeah.
It'd be weird if we sat here and drank while you were just over there, right? There you go.
Yeah,
see, I'm doing
that's it. You know what? That's what we need to do for like some of these remote ones that we want to break into a drink. Is just we could send it to guys in advance. And be like, here,
you have it.
Have this
you
ready.
Have it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we and I think instead of just doing the remote, if we just maybe Jared, if you planned a little bit, and then we could.
You're right. It's my fault.
I could be there with you. I'm just kidding.
But no,
we do have. I love coming down there.
We do have, and I only say this because you might know these guys. Brett Joy and Eric. What's Eric's last name? Eric, bald guy. A super nice bald guy, kills giant deer from New York. You know who I'm talking about. Hansen. Eric Hansen.
Yep.
Yeah, they're both driving down next week. We're gonna catch them the day before Christmas Eve. So
yeah.
Oh, Brett's the freaking, and Brett and I talk all the time.
Do you?
Yeah. He's a great dude. I've scouted with him.
Awesome.
He hunted in PA and actually, I think I changed batteries out for him one time when he was hunting here.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, he's a killer. Good. I don't know Eric as well, but I know Brett really well. It's just solid dude and good hunter. So.
Yeah, really good guys.
Eric's been on a few times, but we haven't had Brett on before, so we're looking forward to it.
Fun.
Yeah, man. Well, yeah, we'll have to. Like I said, we'll have to get together in person and do some podcasting and hang out. You'll have to get both. I'll have to come down to your studio because it's nicer than mine, and even do an East Meets West podcast with you guys on it.
Yeah, dude. Love to.
Yeah, there you go.
Love to. Let's stay in touch too on if North Dakota seems like a thing next year. And dude, I'll tell you this too, and not to exclude y'all, obviously. The invitation's open to anybody here. I've been like haphazardly putting in for elk points, like in states like Wyoming and Montana and some other places. So if you happen to like be like, I think I'm going to draw this place, but it'd be nice to have somebody to go with. Check with me and see. We'll see if I have any points, and we'll start like even not. I know this time of year we're in kind of point. It's getting into point mode here right now. So, and if we can obviously tag Jeremy and do this, great. So,
no, let's definitely talk about that because you got to start planning early and for that stuff. I mean, I was literally rifle hunting the other day, and my buddy sent me a Snapchat that he's like, "Oh, Idaho," I'm like, "Oh shit, I forgot about trying to get into Idaho because to get in there over the counter tags, it's basically like draw. You have to get into like the Pennsylvania doe system online and wait in line, and so I'm literally like sitting there in the woods like trying to get online, and I was like 33,000 in line, and I just logged off, and I was like, I'm not getting a tag. So
not this year.
But we got to start thinking about that stuff. So let's talk more about North Dakota and everything else. So
awesome.
Cool, buddy. Well, we appreciate it. Hang on. We'll get you as soon as we cut off here.
See you, man. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Better Backstrap.
Well, one thing that's undeniable, man, is you and I both like to eat. And so we're going to be partnering with the Better Backstrap this year to have the best seasonings possible for our meat this summer.
Yeah. Well, dude, when it comes to venison, it's like you've heard me talk about before. It's like, what does the preparation for all this look like and stuff? And it's like, I really want to make a point of eating more venison moving forward. And some of the Better Backstrap mixtures have made it super easy.
Yeah. And so we've got kind of 3 core mixtures. You've got your original Better Backstrap, which is for that grilling of your backstrap or tenderloins or anything like that. You've got your classic taco mix.
Can't go wrong with tacos.
Can't go wrong with that. And then you've got your standard SPG in the orange can.
Well, SPG and down the hatch.
There you go. So right now, if you go to betterbackstrap.com, you can use the code HUNTR15 to get 15% off any of your orders on the seasonings, and there'll probably be more coming out here throughout the year.
Get yourself a Better Backstrap.
Beau Martonik, everyone. Beau Martonik.
Beau Martonik. Mustache and all. Man, it does seem it gets thicker every year, I think.
It does. I mean, it's impressive.
Every time I see him, I'm like, whew.
It's impressive. It's a broom.
I've never seen him without it.
It's a broom. I probably wouldn't recognize him. I bet. Like, who are you?
He'd be like a hermit crab without a shell. You ever see one of those?
Yeah. Weird looking.
It's very little weird.
Very weird looking. Oh, Beau. Pretty cool, though. I mean,
he shot 2 big elk.
2 big elk. Freaking killed a big PA buck. Probably going to go to Ohio and seek redemption on that muzzleloader deer from last year.
Shoot my last 4-year-old over there.
Yeah, very possibly. He's like, I'm right on the outside of Jared's property. So, no, it's awesome to have those guys. I mean, it's it's cool to have that network of guys that we've come to know here, more recently with him and Johnny and Rendell and just having those conversations. It's always been really fun, and we're probably well overdue for all being in a camp. North Dakota would be awesme next year. I know Nick and Allie were thinking about it too.
So would Pennsylvania if we could make that happen. Yeah, one of those guys forgot to get their point. And I don't know if 1 point's going to do it anymore, but maybe it was Johnny. Maybe Johnny was like, I forgot to get
I think it was Johnny. Yeah. It's tough because I mean it's we're all kind of going in different directions because we all have plans and like we want to get together, but it's like, in a state like Pennsylvania, especially when you can't hunt Sundays, it's like, it sucks, because you just miss opportunities. And like, if it's good here, it's good in Ohio, it's good in Kentucky, that's how it is.
Yeah. I know. Oh, it slips away. It's like, you have good intentions and you're like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just hard. It's hard to step away from it, if you feel like you got a deer, patterned or whatever, but
yep. Cool. Well, we appreciate everybody listening to episode 230 of the 230 of the HUNTR Podcast. It is the day after Christmas, and we'll catch you all next week.
Later.
Take me